Welcome to the January 31st, 2024 special meeting of the Environmental Quality Commission. This is an in-person and virtual meeting with the Environmental Quality Commission members, city staff, and members of the public. And before we dive into our agenda today, I just want to thank Angela Evans for her years of service with our commission. Former Commissioner Evans, if you're listening, you had a very positive impact within our city, and we're really grateful for your service. Thank you. All right, so moving on to the roll call, I'd like to introduce the staff and EQC members present. In the room, we have myself, Chair Headley, Vice Chair Schmidt, and Commissioners Kissel, Lynn, McKenna, and Pellegrini-Yopart. Staff present include Ori Paz and Liz Tapia. Yeah. All right, so Mr. Paz, would you please provide us instructions?
Thank you.
Yeah, for how the meeting will proceed.
Thank you, Chair Headley and members of the Environmental Quality Commission. And welcome everyone to the special meeting of January 31st, 2024. And thank you to all those attending all virtually right now. We have no members of the public in attendance in the meeting room, but the doors are open. So if you'd like to come by, you're welcome. So we also don't have any members of the commission that are attending remotely. So we don't need to go through the protocols for being on screen. However, we do have some staff that are available to support. And so those members of staff will be on camera and unmute as needed for their portions of tonight's meeting. And just as a reminder for members of the public who are attending virtually and wish to provide public comment, there will be no public comment, no general public comment, as this is a special meeting. However, there will be public comment for each individual item, and to provide public comment for those, after the chair calls for public comment on the item that you wish to speak on, please engage your raised hand feature if you're attending virtually, or press *9 to raise your virtual hand if you're calling in. We'll go over these again as we go through. So with that, that concludes the instructions, and I return the meeting to you, Chair Headley.
Thank you. So moving on to regular business, item C1 is to approve the October 18, 2023 EQC meeting minutes. Are there any clarifying questions from the EQC before we take public comment? Seeing none, would you call for public comment?
Yes. Okay, again, members of the public, please activate the raised hand feature or press *9 if you're calling in. Give a moment. I don't see any raised hands, but I'm returning to you.
Great. Now we can open it for EQC discussion. Is there any discussion about the minutes? And if not, we can move straight to a motion and a second.
I move we approve the minutes from last meeting.
Thank you, Commissioner Kissel. A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Pellegrini-Yopart. Mr. Paz, would you please state the motion?
Yes, as I understand it, we have a motion to approve the October 17th, 2023 meeting minutes. All in favor? All right, okay, so just for the record, we have all commissioners in attendance voting in the affirmative. The motion passes.
Great, thank you. Moving on to C2. So we have an opportunity to receive the update on the results of the Police Department Tesla Patrol pilot. I'm interested to hear how it's gone these past number of months. And we'll do the presentation and then the rest of the things. So thank you for being here with us today.
Yes, thank you. And let me just go ahead and get the presentation on display. Okay.
All right.
All right, well, thank you, Chair Headley, members of the commission, members of the public. My name is Ori Paz. I'm the sustainability analyst with the Sustainability Division. And I'm joined this evening by our Chief of Police, David Norris. Oh, and we're going automatically. I apologize for that. Chief of Police, David Norris, and as well as Administrative Sergeant Scott McDance is available to help support with questions. And we're excited to give this update on the police department's Tesla Patrol pilot. So this evening, we're going to be going over a little bit of the background as to why we were exploring electric vehicles for patrol. We'll take a look at an overview of our fleet, as well as a history of sustainability in the police department. We'll dive into the Tesla pilot overview, the findings from this past year, and some of the next steps related to fleet electrification and the future of electric vehicles in patrol. So at a very high level, the reason we're exploring electric vehicles at all is because the electric vehicles eliminate emissions from vehicles as a point source. And so that improves the air quality in our community, it reduces noise, it helps us meet our climate action plan goals. Specifically, our fleet vehicles help us achieve CAP goal number 5, to eliminate fossil fuels in city operations. And it helps us to save money. We have done the analysis to show that we're looking at approximately 6 cents per mile traveled in fuel savings, looking at the cost of electricity for EVs versus gasoline or diesel. And then we're anticipating about a 50% reduction in the maintenance costs. And you add on to that the cost savings from avoided carbon. And it really, as we look at our fleet, we can see that there's a great opportunity here if we're able to successfully electrify. And our fleet, as similar to many other fleets, when you look at it, you'll see that the police patrol vehicles understandably make up a lot of the emissions, right? Because of the hours of operation, the idling, and then the mileage as well. And so when we're looking at our roughly 300 metric tons of CO2 that we're emitting every year, about 60% of that is from patrol. And then, as we look at the roughly 300,000 miles, again, 40% of that being from patrol, and patrol being one of these harder to electrify areas. It really makes it a great opportunity and kind of an obligation for us if we're serious, which we are, about our climate action plan and our 2030 targets.
Why is it harder to electrify patrol?
That is an excellent question.
Okay.
So one of the main reasons why it's difficult to electrify patrol is because of the unpredictability of that duty cycle. So whereas some of the other vehicles, they have set routes, there's really a maximum distance that you're likely to see, set schedules. In patrol, it's different, right? We have 24-hour coverage. That's multiplied by idling for readiness and urgency and motion, which equate to greater vehicle emissions for community presence, responding to calls and vehicle pursuits. And so when we take a look at our fleet mileage, right, we see a picture of that unpredictability. So this is a very busy graph, and I will save going into it in too much detail. But these are our vehicles. This is the annual mileage year over year from 2020 to 2021, 2022. And as we could imagine, given the total graphs, we're seeing, the highest annual mileages are patrol vehicles or police vehicles. But what we're not seeing is the same vehicle year over year being the highest mileage. And what that tells us is, yes, we're seeing the highest mileage from this group, but we're not seeing the same vehicles because of that unpredictability. And so as we're planning for our fleet infrastructure, our charging infrastructure, our vehicle capabilities, we need to keep in mind that we can't just do simple math on a spreadsheet, because the operations and the kind of the real life situation is much more unpredictable than that, which is why it's great to have the support of our police department and to have partnered with them over the years because they're the ones who know that these operations, and have had a commitment to reducing the carbon footprint and the impact that their vehicles have in the community since even before we had our sustainable fleet policy. So you can see our sustainable fleet policy was adopted in 2020, as well as our climate action plan and the CAP 5 goal to eliminate fossil fuels in city operations by 2030. But before that, the police were already evaluating electric vehicles for parking enforcement. You can see here on the graph, blue is the typical gasoline-powered vehicles. The green color is the hybrids, and the darker green are electric vehicles. And year over year, we see more hybrids entering the fleet, starting in 2018, 2 years before our fleet policy, and really progressing to outnumber the gas vehicles very quickly over the span of 3 years. And now you see a similar rise in the number of electric vehicles. And really in 2023, we saw a lot of those, including the Teslas, go into operations. And if we look at what's projected for 2024, we're seeing even more of those electric vehicles across a range of different police department operations, including kind of the next phase for our pilot for patrol, which is a purpose-built Chevrolet Blazer EV that we're going to be evaluating in a similar way that we did with the Teslas.
Is that been pulled back because GM pulled the Blazer off the market?
Well, we were approved to buy one. I think we got a purchase order. We have been experiencing some delays with that. But it's good to know that they pulled it off, and we can kind of keep apprised of that. I think with a lot of this, right, our objective was to learn, and one of the things that we're learning is it's early, and as innovators, kind of going at this ahead of a lot of the deployments from the major manufacturers. You know, we need to be patient, flexible, and adaptable. And a lot of that, I think, shown through in the Tesla pilot. And so kind of getting into the specifics of the Tesla pilot, right? Our objective was to learn, right? We're trying to decide and determine, whether or not electric vehicles generally can be used for patrol use. We started with these Teslas, but really what we're trying to understand is more broadly about how electric vehicles work, how electric vehicles work for police operations, how electric vehicles work for police patrol operations, and then what are the vehicle and infrastructure needs that need to be met in order to be successful in that. The pilot ran for a year from, we kind of kept the data collection from January to January. The working groups were mainly focused around one group with vehicles that were assigned to full shifts. So we had one vehicle, 2202, which was assigned to the day shift that ran from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And then vehicle 2201 was assigned to the mids or night shift, which runs from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. And then we had a third vehicle, 2203, that was a flexible on-demand vehicle that was available for officers who are interested in trying out the vehicle or to help replace vehicle A or B if they were down. And when we set out, we had some very ambitious data collection ideas and parameters, right? We wanted to track a lot of the quantitative data around charge time, fuel time, miles traveled, downtime, as well as the qualitative assessments of, what was the officer experience? How well did the vehicles, meet their needs? Were there any issues? Things like that. And then we had a whole list of outlined data items, specifically including the avoided greenhouse gas impacts. And part of what we learned through this, on the tail end, is that a lot of our systems are not as easy to parse and pull the data that we were looking for. And so there were some areas where we were still working to try to, pull together some of the data. And there are some areas where it was easier. But I think the data wrestling was definitely a learning point for us as well. And our findings, kind of as a snapshot, this is for the assigned vehicles. So, about 11,000 miles traveled, which is about 3% of the overall fleet mileage. it took approximately 7,500 kilowatt hours to power those miles. We avoided using 910 gallons of gasoline, which equated to about $650 in fuel savings. And we avoided 8 metric tons of CO2 just in the year for these 2 vehicles, which is about 3% of our total fleet.
Where are you buying your gas? You're getting it that cheap.
We do have a favorable,
I want that gas.
well, you can, but we actually can't, we can't tell it to you. But we do participate in.
I'm all electric, but it is.
Good.
Well, there's the offset with the cost to charge the batteries, right?
Yes.
I'm guessing that's part of the equation there.
Yes, yeah, yeah, so the 6 cents per
Uh.
mile factors in what we're paying for electricity. Thank you, Chief
Yeah.
Norris. Okay, and then just looking to, right, the general finding was, as expected, that the vehicles, after being outfitted, right, with ballistic door panels and all of the equipment, they're heavier than the off the line vehicles. And we were anticipating that they weren't going to be getting the range that was advertised under best conditions. And it was a pretty substantial reduction. And so we saw kind of working backwards from trips and looking at battery percentages that on average for vehicle 2201, we were looking at about 167 miles of range at 100% battery. And that was 133 at 80%. And that 80% is an important value because the best practice for electric vehicles is to operate between 20 and 80. For the pilot, we operated from 100%, and that's something that, you know, we're going to kind of continue to look at again, because of the unpredictable nature of these patrol operations. That added range is necessary in the pilot, and we're going to kind of keep looking at that. 2202 had a bit of a larger range, observed range of 215 miles on average. 80% would get it to 172.
Are they different model years or the same car?
They're the same model year, but what we noticed looking at the data is it looks like the battery for 2202 is larger than the battery for 2201.
It depends on which model you're looking at.
Well, they're the same model.
The same
and
model.
the same model year. It's just when we're looking at the data and how the vehicles were performing, and these two are outfitted nearly exactly the same.
But they're the same model year. You're saying these are Model Ys, right?
These are Model Ys, yeah.
So the 2201 data is a 2201 model year? And the 22 data is a 2202 model year?
No, so 2201 and 2202 are numbers that are assigned to the vehicles.
Yeah.
And they're a function of the year that we purchased them, so
Got
year
it.
2022
There are
for
two.
the purchase year, and then that would be car 1 and car 2.
Gotcha.
So not having anything to do with the model year, and then there are a couple of details. Is it okay for me to just kind of jump in?
Yeah,
Or-
yeah,
There are a couple of things that really, we might look at as anecdotal information, that we could speculate on, but they wouldn't be part of the hard data. And those areas of speculation would be, you have different size officers, so there's a different weight distribution on any given time. You have different driving performance at night versus daytime.
Hmm.
So some, the speeds can differ, the start and stop traffic can differ. So different types of driving patterns, different driving styles. You have 2 different police officers, 2 different driving styles. Some may patrol in a certain manner, others may patrol in a different manner. And so there are things that we can't pick up by, just straight hard data collection, that really are kind of like style oriented. So I would not be surprised to see a differential like that among 2 different cars driven by 2 different drivers or multiple different drivers during 2 different sets of conditions.
Okay, so this is the same
Right.
year. One is nights and one is days. I was thinking there was 2 different years.
This is our data collection year, 2023.
Got it. All right. So the difference between left and right is not different years. It's different between night driving and day driving.
Two different
That's it,
cars.
right.
Two different cars.
Two different cars.
6 p.m. to 6 a.m.
201
or
is
6
the
a.m. to
number
6
of the
p.m.
car.
Yes.
Sorry,
It's
and then,
possible they use the heat at night, which
Yeah,
takes a lot of
sure.
battery.
Yeah,
During the day.
so the blue is the data based on what Tesla tells you? Is that what it
The
is?
blue is observed range, so that's 100%.
if you charge.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's both observed, one is in 100 and one is at 80.
One is 80, yes, yeah.
And just one more small comment,
Interesting,
those different drivers for these cars over the time period, not the same driver the whole year?
So the way we need to construct the pilot is we have two vehicles. Each of them are assigned, one is assigned to nights and one is assigned to days. Our nighttime assigned vehicle during the day is on the Charger. Our daytime assigned vehicle during the night is on the Charger. And each of those is assigned to an officer assigned to patrol. We have two patrol teams. So that our patrol officers work 4 days on and 4 days off. So we actually have four different officers, if you think about it, two on nights and two on
Yeah.
days, each assigned to, one team on one side of the week. So there will be variability. And then, we were discussing this today. So if one of those officers part of the time might be an acting supervisor, because we have officers that serve in that role when the supervisor's off. That officer drives a different vehicle, so they might not be driving the Tesla that day. They might have to get in the watch commander car, which actually has other tools, incident command tools and tactical tools that the Tesla doesn't carry because it's not a supervisor vehicle. And so we might have to mix and match. So you might have another driver in the mix, or you might have that car being idle for the day if we don't have someone to staff that car. So there are a lot of different variables that pull into it. And it would be great to have a perfect scenario, right? Where you have two officers assigned on each team, and then by golly, they're doing that for the entire 365 day year. It just, it would almost be impossible, and it doesn't matter what police agency you're talking about to accomplish that.
People driving at night are probably going to be driving faster and by themselves. So it's going to be faster, that's lower mileage, and it's probably going to, if you're driving with other cars, you're actually getting higher mileage because of the drafting part.
It's
So, I mean,
the daytime
it's
start and stop traffic, the typical traffic that you see during the day definitely takes a drain on the battery, just like it would on the gas tank.
Yeah, and so when we look kind of at a snapshot of the mileage, we see kind of the main takeaway, right, is that the distance in a given shift doesn't even, with the exception of this spike, which we're still investigating, does not exceed 100 miles, right? Very rarely gets to that. And so when we look at our operational range, right, even at 133, the 80% level, the question of whether or not the battery can support the shift is pretty decidedly answered yes, right? So
So that's the question you're trying to answer, is whether the range is there.
right, and so
That's
that's
right.
one of the questions that we're trying to understand, right? It's like, can the vehicle complete the typical shift? And the answer there is yes. And then the question is, what are the operational and infrastructure needs related to the vehicle? And that's kind of where we're gonna go next. So just a little bit more on
Sorry,
mileage.
so before you go, so which Tesla model are we talking?
Why? These
Yeah,
are
but why
both
comes
Tesla
in
Y.
long range, short range?
Right, these are long.
The long range
Yeah.
wise?
Yeah, so advertised at, I think, 310 now.
Yeah, Tesla's, which is notoriously.
Ambitious, I think.
Ambitious.
Yeah.
They just changed it.
Yeah.
Oh,
Downgrade.
Yeah,
They downgraded.
To
because
280?
They were forced to upgrade, to downgrade.
that's good.
And it's always theoretical and ideal, right? And it doesn't reflect the average driver.
Yeah, but that too, but in particular, Tesla is particularly bad.
Right. And so kind of one of the things that we knew going into this, right, it's like we have Teslas, they were the longest range, largest cost reasonable vehicle at the time. And that's why we chose them for the pilot. But we don't have any kind of illusions that the future in 2030 is going to be a fully Tesla police fleet. And part of that is because of some of the things that we learned through this pilot, specifically related to outfitting these civilian vehicles for police use. So we won't kind of belabor mileage too much, but again, because of the variability, we looked at the average daily mileage, we looked at the maximum mileage for the shifts. And then we tracked the median as well to try to take away some of the data noise. And typically, right, lower mileage. However, there's that unpredictable nature. And so we see that reflected in some of the charging data as well. I'll note that for this pilot, we were using level 2 chargers that had about a 6.6 kilowatt output. And we were charging to 100%. And so one of the things that we know about that and that we have learned more and more is that charging period from 80 to 100 is going to take a lot longer than that charging period up to 80. And, as we get more comfortable with the ranges, we can look at that, and then also see, variability from vehicle to vehicle. But what's promising is when we look at, what was the average percentage in the battery, right? What was the percentage in the battery when the battery started charging? We see, typically the average is around 63 for 2201 or almost 75 for 2202. And so that tells us that the charge that these shifts are taking, typically, it's not more than 50% or 40% of the battery. So the next thing that we looked at was vehicle downtime. And so part of the challenge again, right, outfitting these civilian vehicles for police operations. And we were, I think we were the second police department to deploy a Model Y, right after Fremont. So we used the outfitter who had the most experience, one vehicle, and we ran into some challenges with outfitting. And so you see, the work on the vehicles internally, right? So like maintenance for the regular service of the vehicles was comparable to kind of our comparison hybrid Explorer vehicles. But really what we saw much more of it was this outside work downtime. And those were related to some of the outfitting challenges that we'll talk about.
That's a one-time vehicle downtime?
That's total over the course of the pilot. So
Okay, and how long was the pilot?
1 year.
1 year, okay.
Or can you say that one time? That was the outfitting or the outfitting and maintenance as the year progressed?
Sorry, that was so this is a total snapshot of the total hours of downtime for maintenance, so service to the vehicles done by city staff in our fleet department. So that's the city work. And then outside is downtime related to work that was being done by an outside organization or agency that
Oh, I see.
was for the.
But this was not the outfitting. This was after it was already.
Correct, yeah, this is all
Outfitting.
within outfitting. And one of the things that we will talk about, what we can talk about a little bit now is, the delay, like we're very comfortable with delays because we learned a lot from this, that the outfitting took a lot longer than, it would have for one of our kind of more purpose-built vehicles. I think we took possession of the Teslas in August, and they were both, ready and put into service in January. And so like that was 4 months of time for outfitting. Some of it were challenges by the outfitter and other kind of delays on their end. And so, right, as we're looking at, okay, the next phase with the Blazer, right? No one has outfitted a Chevrolet Blazer for patrol use. So we're anticipating we're gonna have similar delays. So it might not be till the, middle of 2025 until we start getting actual real good data from that vehicle.
Mhm.
How long would that traditionally take for another, if you were just gonna outfit something you bought 5 years ago? Is it a week? Is it a month?
It depends on our outside resource that we use. So as an example, we have an outside resource that does most of the vehicles within the county and a few from across the bay, and they're very busy. As you can imagine, they are now the experts on how to outfit some of these electric vehicles, which is great for us because they've done the trial and error that it requires to make that happen. But they're extraordinarily busy. So even if we're outfitting an Explorer, the difference is that what we purchase from Ford when we purchase an Explorer is a patrol-ready Explorer, which means that there are a minimal number of components, minimal amount of wiring that they have to drop in as they build this for patrol readiness with an off-the-line commercial grade vehicle that might be an electric vehicle. There's a whole different process that has to take place, and it's only slightly different, but not very different from like if we were just gonna take a commercially available gas powered vehicle and wrap it in black and white and turn it into a patrol car. There'll be a lot of things we'd have to retrofit to make that happen. There are some specific things with the Teslas, which I know Ori's gonna get into, so I'm not gonna steal his thunder. But we can talk about, further details as well.
Right, which kind of brings us into the outfitting discussion. So if we look at the costs to outfit the Tesla, right, there is all of the kind of safety. Some of that is similar to what we would need to do to the Explorers. However, the really big difference between these vehicles, there's no engine block, so that doesn't provide the typical officer safety cover that they need. And so we installed ballistic door panels, which again added weight, changed the weight of the doors, and we'll talk about a little bit of kind of what that did to the doors staying open. Spoiler alert, they closed automatically from the weight. We also added wheel covers to protect the wheels, and then we needed to buy new communications equipment. And when we look at the hybrid Explorers, right, some of those costs we don't see, right? Specifically the ballistic door panels, those come standard. There's also an engine block. Then we don't need the wheel covers. The safety costs go down a little bit, right? So that's because it's more familiar for the outfitter. There's more available equipment. And the big thing is for these, we've been able to roll over our communications equipment year over year. And so you're looking at $0 for those computer assets. In the next couple of years, we are going to need to purchase new ones because the technology is continuing to evolve. And so we're looking at about a $10,000 cost to put new equipment in. The big difference will be that, for these patrol purpose-built vehicles, there's space in the consoles and everything is kind of more standard. Whereas with the Tesla, we have much more kind of custom outfitting that needs to be done. And we're not able to interface with Tesla's system. And so we can't connect any of those things to the actual onboard computer. And just
So as you pointed out, this is not just a hybrid Explorer, this is a hybrid Explorer Patrol or whatever is the model.
correct, yeah.
And it is specifically built by
Yeah.
Ford as a hybrid for patrol.
And I'm sure you'll talk about that later, but it's like, does Chevrolet will do something like that or
Those
does
are
Ford?
Blazer, they're looking.
Okay.
That's what they've advertised.
But it's a market thing.
Yes, yeah, the police vehicle market is,
We'll definitely get into that later.
yes. So just a snapshot of kind of the different outfitting costs as we compared them for our vehicles. You're looking at about a 30% cost premium, and that's for the Tesla over these Patrol Explorers. In part because of the vehicle itself, the base price is higher, and then there's increased outfitting costs. Again, if we kind of project into the future, we're going to see the outfitting costs come a little bit closer, but we're still looking at. I'm just going to wait for the train going by. Okay.
Model Y costs, I don't know, is there a premium, like, do we get something other than the standard Model Y?
We got the long range, and so we paid more to have that larger battery, and we're likely to see that continue, right? So in the recent vehicle contract authorizations, we did budget for those long range versions of all of the vehicles that we're buying, because we think overall operationally that's going to pay itself back. and help us, with kind of balancing charging infrastructure, which is its own kind of nebulous topic. So moving on, these are kind of the things that we saw already related to outfitting, but we'll go into some comparisons side by side. And so on the left, you'll see kind of a photo of the cockpit or the front seat of the Tesla as compared to the Explorer. And there's some constraints within the driver's seat. And you might not notice it as a kind of a civilian or someone who's, sitting in the Tesla without any, of the duty belt or gear that the police officers wear. But when you start to think about, okay, how wide does that person become when they have all of the necessary equipment that they need to perform their jobs? And it changes, right? It changes the relationship between the body and those nice seats that hug somebody who's not wearing a belt, then trap a weapon or other equipment. And prevent officers from being able to access that. And some of the larger officers, right, because of where this console is situated, right, it's a higher console. It's got a seat. If you look at the Explorer, right, it's a flat seat. It's a wide seat. It's a low console. All of these things that over iteration and iteration and iteration by Ford, building these purpose-built police vehicles, they figured out a lot of these things. And so, there's no doubt that Priority One and the other people who are outfitting the Teslas are gonna continue to learn, from this. But these were challenges for our officers, and because it's difficult to fit when you're wearing that duty belt. And then just the size of the vehicle, right? If you go into a non-police outfitted Tesla Y, and you go into the back seat, you might remark on how much space you have. Once you put in the kind of protective infrastructure and the prisoner seat and all of those kind of communications equipment, you really end up with not a lot of space in the rear seat. And so that it affects kind of operations. It affects how the officers are able to perform their jobs. And as we look at the larger vehicle, right, in the Explorer, there's much more room for the people who are detained and transported. And space continues to be a frontier that we need to navigate with the Teslas. And in part, right, we're looking at the Explorers, and this is actually I believe it's a supervisor vehicle. And so there's even more equipment underneath this black shelf on the right. For the Explorer, but in the rear storage, limited gear space, and this presents some challenges. Again, right, these vehicles are not solely assigned to one officer, and so there's some gear that goes in every vehicle. There's some gear that they have that's personal items, and so being able to accommodate kind of two of these standard bins is important for kind of the smooth operations, making sure people have what they need, and a challenge for the Tesla. There is a frunk on the Tesla, which we don't have a photo of here, or front trunk, but it was honestly a little bit too small, and then accessing it is challenging, so it's little used. Moving into some of the challenges related to the door access, the doors is actually difficult to open quickly on a regular vehicle, and then you add the weight from the ballistic panels, and the door is heavier, and so makes it a little bit even more difficult to operate. Also, the button operation proved to be more challenging than the standard door handles and latches. And again, mentioned that the heavier door was closing on the officers, and so that presents an issue that we'll talk about in a little bit. Next, we looked at lighting controls, and so very important, especially in night operations, for officer safety, to be able to turn the lights down as they're approaching a vehicle to get an assessment of what's going on, and not to be lit up in as they approach. And so, with these Explorers, there's a knob that can turn off all of the lights as you approach. With the Tesla, it's a 3-step touchscreen situation, which is quite difficult to manage while driving a patrol vehicle. It would be difficult to do without everything else. And so those challenges stem, right, it's more so about the interface with the vehicle, because we're not able to manipulate the Tesla controls because the vehicle's too smart, and everything has to be done through the central computer, which controls everything. And so it makes it challenging to use them in patrol. And finally, just looking at the vehicle height, right? So again, maneuverability on road. We heard from the officers that they accelerate very well. They're able to keep speed. It's a comfortable ride. It's quieter, but the lower vehicle profile limits their ability to do things like jump curbs or take the vehicles off road if needed. Whereas the higher vehicle profile for the Explorer lends itself to that a little bit more. And so when we look at, okay, what were the objectives, right? Circling back to that, we set out to learn, and I think we learned a lot from this effort, specifically about what were the, operational capabilities of the vehicles, and where do we need to be looking as we're looking at the kind of the next chapter for electric vehicles and the outfitting challenges, and making sure we're continuing to listen to the officers who've participated and given us really good feedback and shared their concerns about the vehicles. And so just at a high level, right, we learned the vehicles are capable of doing our typical shift. They have that good acceleration and maneuverability on the road, but the low vehicle height is problematic, especially for jumping curbs and things of that nature. We need additional chargers, and we've been working very hard on that, as well as a charging schedule, right? Because we need to coordinate basically a new task on top of everything else that staff is already doing. And so there's some growing pains there, and we're continuing to work as a team to address those. And then if we want to use these vehicles for 24 hours, which we do, we're going to need faster chargers. A lot of the challenges that we uncovered and learned, right, is our objective, were related to outfitting, right? It's not necessarily the vehicle. The vehicle is perfectly fine as a civilian vehicle. It's as an outfitted police vehicle that you run into the issues that we ran into related to kind of the delivery delays, downtime. We had some radio issues. It's digital keys versus keys that are universal. And so how does that affect operations and support and things of that nature? Lighting controls, those challenges that are all tied into the fact that all systems are tied into that one big tablet. And we don't have access from Tesla to make changes to that, which is challenging. Some of the things related to the console heights and touch screens and space constraints, those are all things that we learned about and that we're going to be looking for in kind of that next larger vehicle and the next vehicles down the line. And I want to take a minute to talk through some of the officer safety concerns that were raised as we progress through this pilot. And we're very grateful to all of the officers who participated and used these vehicles, tested them out, and gave good feedback. And some of them requested to be transferred to different vehicles because they were uncomfortable proceeding with them due to some of these concerns. Right. So not being able to access a weapon in their seat. Right. It's the lights that we're timing out on traffic stops, which we kind of got to work around for. But that was a serious officer safety concern. Right. You're out there at night on a traffic stop. Somebody comes to support you and the door closes automatically, which is different than they were trained to, use that door as cover and all of these things that are different with this vehicle. And so understandably, some were uncomfortable proceeding with them. We have others that are continuing to use them and test them. but yeah, all of these things that we're learning, some of them are things that we have been able to work around. And, you know, things that we might be able to take back to the outfitter to update. But some of them are just challenges related to again, using this vehicle in the current outfitting for this operation. I'll just note two other ones that were kind of more on the vehicle than the outfitting, but there's a bit of a delay when you shift. And so they weren't able to take off quickly. We had at least one instance of autopilot interference. So pulling up, the vehicle stopped itself because it was concerned at the rate of approach. And so again, like if we're able to, you know, have some conversation and interface with the system, we might be able to address some of those things. But as it stands, the Tesla itself is kind of a black box, and we're not able to make any of those modifications. But we have, again, we've learned a lot. All of this has informed our electric vehicle charging infrastructure plans, and we continue to kind of move forward with those. We're going to be providing an informational item to the city council that kind of packages up a lot of these findings, and then information about the costs, the wait time, all of that. And that'll be going to the council in the coming months. We're going to continue to use the vehicles. They're a huge hit with the school resource officer, and you know, the public seems to really appreciate seeing them. There are officers who do enjoy using them and are comfortable using them, and continue to use them for patrol and other uses. And then, you know, the next chapter, right, where we were approved to purchase the Chevy Blazer EV, that's supposed to be purpose-built for patrol. So, you know, this year we're going to be outfitting and deploying that for patrol use and seeing, you know, how those differences play out. And then really, you know, the big thing is moving forward and installing new EV charging infrastructure, which, you know, again, it is a similar team to the Tesla pilot team has been working across department lines to find chargers and put together a really solid EV charging plan that was brought to the commission back in October. And then, you know, we're taking advantage of as many programs as we can from Peninsula Clean Energy, supporting technical assistance for fleets, as well as PG&E bringing new infrastructure to the City Hall site to support our charging needs.
Or before we move on,
Sorry.
Right, anyway, okay. Are we committed to the Blazer? Because I got to tell you, I mean, I follow a lot of electric vehicle news groups, and they Consumer Reports put out the worst possible review of the Chevy Blazer EV of any car ever.
We saw it.
So I'd be really cautious about being one of the first players, especially with electronics problems.
Can I jump in
Yeah.
a minute and just, I want to talk a little bit about commitment, because, you know, we are committed to, you know, doing the best we can with this goal of electrifying the fleet by 2030. But we also know that, and I think we presented to you today, like, this is a very niche operation. It is very, you know, job specific, and we need to proceed with some due caution. We want to electrify our fleet, and we are, you know, what we're looking at is between hybrids and electric, we're going to be over 70% of our police fleet will be working with, you know, a lower carbon footprint than gas powered across the board. We're committed to continuing to increase that number. We want to be cautious about what we continue to acquire in terms of electric vehicles. We want to watch the market. I think it's important for us to stick with the current single car commitment for that Chevy Blazer, because number one, it sounds like they're holding back the market while they're trying to make improvements. So if we haven't taken delivery yet, that's probably not a bad thing. The second thing is I go to national conventions on an annual or semi-annual basis. There are always new electric vehicles that are out there. that are designed now for police patrol, coming from some of the larger American manufacturers and some of the larger European manufacturers that are delivering to some European police agencies. And so there are new things coming on the market on a regular basis, and we want to very carefully tread into that as we start to, change the percentages within our fleet. But I agree with you, like, we have to proceed with caution. We have to kind of watch what the feedback is. We also have to do what we're doing here, which is to really dive in and generate the feedback ourselves. This was an excellent experiment and pilot project for us because we've never done electric vehicles in patrol. So now we are doing electric vehicles in patrol, and we've also added a number of production cars that are all electric to our unmarked fleet. And our detectives, like, we have 3 or 4 Mustang Mach-E's already deployed. We have one Ford F-150 Lightning deployed and another one on the way. We have a Chevy Bolt. And then we have 3 motorcycles that are European emissions certified, which means that there's super low emissions. And we'll continue to move forward in all of those categories. And the good thing is, like, with detectives driving these unmarked electric vehicles, they're going to get used to that, and they're going to gain an understanding of what they like and what they don't like. And we'll have these 3 Teslas that are in our fleet because the maintenance is so easy on these, and they don't break down the way gas-powered vehicles do. They're going to be in our fleet for a while, so we'll be able to continue to experiment and watch that. We'll be able to watch what the market does in terms of retrofitting some of the commercial vehicles, electric vehicles. And we're also going to be able to watch what the market does in terms of delivering patrol-ready vehicles that come from the major manufacturers. And if we can exert a little bit of patience, I think, in the short term, to watch how that market develops and see what it delivers to us, because we're not the only agency that's looking at it, but we are the agency that's farthest ahead, in my opinion. I think that will be, that's a good place for us to be. We know we want to meet the goal. We continue to stretch towards the goal, but we also operate with a little bit of caution. Well, we do 2 things. We watch what's coming into the market so we can pick the right thing when we finally convert everything over. And we improve the infrastructure to get to where we need to be in order to support that. Because right now we're underwater on that, right? We have a number of electric vehicles and we have a very short number of chargers to work with. And I don't want to send my officers out to the EVgo station or the charge point in a public place to sit there for 30 minutes in a public place and just be kind of hanging out there without even a vehicle to help them to move around. So I hope that we've been able to paint a good picture of, like, how much we're putting into learning on this. And I have to, I give a lot of credit to Ori, not just for the data that he's collected, but for the fact that he was willing to kind of, like, lay himself out to us a little bit in terms of what he didn't know. And make some assumptions that we had to correct on, ask some questions that we had to answer for him. And we said, like, come on out, Ori, why don't you ride around with our officers a little bit and understand and experience what we're looking at? Because in theory, from the outside looking in, where, the idea of, like, backing your electric car out of the driveway, stopping lights on it and going on patrol, it seems pretty easy, right? But it's not as easy as that. And so, Ori did a good job, I think, of throwing himself into this and being receptive to some of the feedback, even if it wasn't the greatest feedback, so that we can give you all the best picture that we can give you about what we're doing to try and stretch towards that goal.
And one thing you mentioned, I hadn't really thought about, but are you committed to a single vehicle for all use cases? Or are you saying, or are you anticipating that, whether it's people who are doing school patrols or the detectives might need a different vehicle than ones that can jump a curb and.
Right, so 100% no, like, it's not an all one size fits all prospect. And I'll give you a really good example. So as an example, the hybrid Explorers that we're running out of patrol right now, they're entirely suitable. Not every cop likes them. I'll own that, right? But they're entirely suitable for regular patrol purposes. But the supervisor vehicles that carry extra tools and have that slide out tray that you saw that carries actually a lot of heavy equipment in it, pushes that hybrid Explorer over a suitable weight level for it. And so that can create some issues during high-speed pursuits, during maneuverability, other things that car is not designed for. So, you know,
So it's gonna be portfolio.
right, so one of the reasons that we're looking at the Ford F-150 Lightning is there's an enormous amount of room in that to carry tools and potentially an incident command, kind of pop-out structure and other things where that might be our supervisor car of the future, or some other variant of that that's a larger SUV that's fully electric might be a possibility where we don't need that for every patrol car. Right, and then, you know, obviously the motorcycles is a whole different topic. And right now, there's nothing in the industry that is designed a fully electric motorcycle for police purposes to hook in the radio and the other things, because the electrical circuits don't work the same way in a motorcycle. So we have to watch that market, and we're watching it carefully, because I will tell you, our cops are really excited about, you know, taking something out that's different, that's new, but we want it to be the right thing.
For sure.
And the reason why you went with the Blazer is because Ford doesn't have a similar problem?
They are working on the Explorer, but the Explorer, fully electric Explorer is not ready. And we went to a couple of conventions. One was for fleet specifically. One was law enforcement convention where we started to see the Blazer fully outfitted as a patrol car and coming from factory, like ready to be outfitted as a patrol car. And I like the amount of space that we see in it. I like the way that it's arranged, much more functional for the typical patrol officer. And so this looked like a good place for us to endeavor. I'm glad we're taking a small step with that and not buying a bunch of them because of what we're seeing on some of the feedback. But it will be good to bring that in and take a look at something that's different than just bringing a commercial electric vehicle that's not outfitted and retrofitting it and trying it out. This will be something that's more designed for our specific profession and seeing how that works.
One last question. Has the city overall considered plug-in hybrids? Because I know there's been a lot of literature recently that population at large isn't necessarily as engaged on EVs as they once were because of some of the issues that we've all collectively found. And there's a hypothesis, and I know Toyota is strongly in the plug-in hybrid space, but now GM has made an announcement they're going to come back with plug-in hybrids. Given, you know, the dynamics of how you use the vehicles and the range and things like that, it could be the bang for the buck in the near term, could be plug-in hybrids. That's something that you guys are looking at.
I'm going to defer to Ori, I think, for part of this, but but part of the answer is, you know, I think that could be a solution. And I think that just the fact that EQC is not saying like, no, it's got to be electric, that like electric.
I don't know
It's
that
gotta
we
be-
are saying, I'm just saying
And I know that
personally.
Nancy knows this, like, we've had that conversation before where we're starting to angle that direction. And which is why we got aggressive with putting the Teslas out and trying them. But I think that in part, like, as we look at it from a 10,000-foot view, the idea of a plug-in hybrid, we're totally open to that. The infrastructure question will still be the infrastructure question in terms of what charging infrastructure and hardware we have. And that's going to be where, you know, pardon the pun, the rubber meets the road on this.
Right.
Yes.
So, thank you both for the presentation.
And so just to wrap it up, I did want to just make sure we do some thank yous, because there was a lot of teamwork and a lot of really great work. So like a huge thank you to Chief Norris and Administrative Sergeant Scott McDance, who's online and was our kind of main partner and champion in the police department, as well as our fleet supervisor, Don Weber, who did so much research and really took on the brunt of the work outfitting these vehicles and navigating all of the challenges and kind of continuing to learn more and more about the vehicles and infrastructure and all of that. And then certainly the officers who participated in the Tesla pilot. And so all of them, you know, just a huge thank you for the feedback and, you know, trying something new and kind of like being the brave innovators that we have come to very much appreciate in our partners in PD. And then I just wanted to, so we did do things a little bit out of order, I noticed. We were all very excited, and I think that's great.
Well, yeah, that's where I was kind of going.
Wrap it up.
Yeah,
Okay.
so what I wanted to say was, I really appreciate your commitment to this long-term commitment you all have had to sustainability in the police department and the fleet, and your willingness to try new things and to gather all of this data and to listen carefully to the people who are using the cars to make sure that it's gonna work for your needs, our collective needs. So I think this is our opportunity. We've been asking questions as we go along, clarifying questions. So in a moment, we'll open it up for that, but then we want to make sure there's room for public comment. And then if there's any additional EQC discussion, we can come back. And I think we got a little loose in the last few moments, maybe the last hour and a half.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
clarifying
Yes.
questions? Is that what you were gonna say, Ori, or was there something
Yes.
different?
And then there was just like one of the clarifying questions about the plug-in hybrids. I can just like address that quickly, is that we have
Yeah.
3 that are deployed for pool use within the city fleet. Our goal is to eliminate fossil fuels in city operations by 2030, and so, you know, we need to be looking at the zero emission vehicles. And so where it could work for the general public and, you know, for other agencies, like we have this very ambitious goal to eliminate. And so all of the work that we're doing is kind of projecting us towards that goal.
Well,
And
we
we're
appreciate
hoping the
your-
market, you know, participates.
Yes, we appreciate your commitment to that. I do have a couple of questions, clarifying questions.
Okay, clarifying question.
With the Blazer EV, are you planning on doing it like a pilot where you collect all the data and continue this deep learning that you did for the Tesla? Or is it gonna be more of a regular experience where you just add it to the fleet and hope for the best?
My thought, and I don't want to speak for Ori on this, but it is, you are asking for local community participation part. But my thought on that is that I think we've set a good model for how we collect data and information on this. I want this to be a data informed process. And so, given that there's only one vehicle, that makes it pretty easy to kind of continually monitor and observe what we're doing with that vehicle on a daily basis. So I would be interested in continuing to collect information and bring back recommendations.
That makes sense. My other question was whether or not you were gonna share this information back with Tesla, if they were inclined to create a car that was ready to be properly outfitted in the service of everyone learning and growing.
Yes, yeah, and I think that when we look at the kind of the format and the materials that we'll be putting into the informational item, definitely that will be packaged in a way that it's very easy to send both to Tesla, to our outfitter, and then to other agencies who are looking at, you know, at doing this.
That'll be really helpful for everyone. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a similar clarifying, if it's clarifying or not, but there were 2. One is, and we can maybe take this offline, but a willingness to do a case study around the way this was constructed. And, you know, being able to share that widely in a number of places, because I think being an innovator like this and doing the rigor and testing that you did, long-term commitment to sustainability, I think it will spur a lot of other people to go down the same path. So just that's probably more a request than a clarifying question, but the hope is we can take this and work with this in a lot of different ways. If there's a willingness to do that.
Yes, not quite a clarifying question. So maybe we can save it for
I'll say
discussion.
that. The clarifying question.
We definitely want to address it.
Yeah, that's cool. So table that one. The clarifying question was the infrastructure. So I think we poked at that a little bit and alluded to it a little bit, but I want to make sure I understood that when you say it's the biggest need, is it lack of stations, lack of spaces? Is that kind of being worked in parallel? Or I just didn't pick up enough of the infrastructure because that felt like one of Chief Norris's point about like, that's probably one of the next big hurdles. So I'm just trying to get a little more information on what that means.
You're the one that crosses over all the different departments
Sure.
in this endeavor, so.
Yes, yeah, I have made friends with a lot of people in this process, so it's been really an interdepartmental effort. And I'll just say that we are moving kind of full full bore towards a very, very comprehensive and substantial EV charging infrastructure plan for both the civic campus, so here at 701 Laurel. That'll be for the police department, and then for city vehicles that are parked in the city council chambers lot, as well as infrastructure that'll support community charging in the future. And then we also have plans for the corporation yard, and have been thinking very, very thoughtfully about, how do we kind of continue to maintain flexibility at a site that's, looking at redevelopment in the coming decade, but still meeting our needs in the coming years. And so, we have kind of in parallel with this pilot, we've been working on that EV charging plan. And so we're looking at, bringing on at least 16 of the low power DC fast chargers that are going to support basically like a one port per vehicle per patrol shift. So there's about 6 or 7 vehicles on a patrol shift. The idea being that when they come in to park between shifts, for the ones that are not being used, kind of in that 24-hour configuration, they're going to be able to be charged at a higher rate than the level 2s that were, the 4 6 kilowatt level 2s that we have right now. And then we are also, we were approved to purchase a FreeWire boost charger, which is this really kind of innovative approach to charging, because it has an integrated battery. And so it's going to be able to it's going to connect to our emergency server. It's going to be able to hold charge island in the event of an outage. It'll still be able to distribute some charge. And if it runs out of juice until we, get a civic campus microgrid, it's still connected to our generator, which is not ideal, but in an emergency, we need to do what we need to do. We're also looking at an expandable DC fast charger for the courtyard that's going to be in a pull-through configuration, so that if there are vehicles that need a top off, the police vehicles will have a dedicated high power charger. But they can also kind of go to the courtyard as needed, which is kind of more similar to our current operations. That's also going to support some of the larger vehicles out at the courtyard, as well as the other fleet vehicles. And then, we've got some higher power level 2s that we're looking at for the city council chambers lot. And again, the really exciting thing is that we're looking at putting in the infrastructure. We've worked with PG&E through their fleet program to bring a new transformer that's going to be dedicated to EV charging. So we're not kind of coming up against our electrical capacity concerns that have been really plaguing a lot of the early conversations around electrification, and are not going to put us in a position where we're competing, right? We want to charge our vehicles, but we also want to electrify our systems. And so that program has been really, really great. It took some flexibility and a lot of teamwork to put us in a position to participate in that program. And our partnership with PCE and their technical assistance really helped us to be ready for that. And all of it is kind of moving along. I'd like to say that it's moving completely smoothly and very quickly, but I don't want to lie in a public meeting. I'll instead say that we're doing a really great job, a lot of good teamwork. We've taken all of the steps that we need to be ready to take advantage of these programs and get our infrastructure in. And now what we really need to do is kind of come together, batten down the hatches, and say, look, we have this end in sight. When this is installed, we're going to be in a really good position to very cost effectively add chargers as we go. We just need to really support, our brave innovators and partners in the police department as they, try to shuffle their 10 vehicles across 4 ports.
Indeed. Well, Ori, I really appreciate your leadership on this and your ability to collaborate across all these different departments of the city and beyond. So with that, shall we open it up for public comment?
Yeah, if there's no more clarifying questions, then yes. Thank you, Chair Headley. Members of the public who wish to provide public comment on this item, please activate the raised hand feature if you're attending virtually. I'll then give you the ability to open your microphone and you can provide your public comment. And for those members of the public who are calling in, please use *9. I do see one one raised hand, and so I will allow them to talk. This is Brian Schmidt. You should be able to unmute yourself and provide public comment.
Thank you. Good evening, Brian Schmidt from Menlo Spark, and I very much appreciate the excellent presentation and the information we've heard. I think maybe a glass half full perspective of this is that the Tesla vehicle is competing up against the Ford Explorer, which is purpose made for this purpose, and it was not a complete disaster. So that's not a bad outcome necessarily. Hopefully there'll be improvements over time, and I'm just really glad that that the city is putting efforts into this. I think there's plenty of opportunities to meet our goal of being fossil free by 2030, and encourage it to continue. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for your public comment. Any others?
Okay, at this time, I am not seeing any raised hands.
All right, so we can open this up for EQC discussion, which I think we've already kind of led into. But if there's anything that's not been said or asked, this would be the time. Yes.
Yes, I do. I was waiting for this before, instead of jumping in the middle. So I think it's a great work. I mean, you guys have done, it's very impressive how early you started and all that you have done. So kudos to everybody involved. Very, very strong kudos. I think that as the public mentioned, I think I'm going for our goal of being fully electric is wonderful. Things are going to get much better. I think that the early feedback with the GM platform, they are obviously going through some growing pains. They are very ambitious, but we'll have to see what they do. I think GM is a big corporation and they are doing a lot of things. So I do have two sets of comments. One is the presentation. I think it might be useful to classify that summary table. I mean, just an idea, right? The way I see it is there are three different types of things. One is electric vehicles as electric vehicles, and that's all that you have done about the mileage and the charging infrastructure. Although there's a comment about the charging infrastructure I want to mention. Then the second one is it's not a patrol vehicle. So I mean that's I mean as the public mentioned, Brian, is like it's apples and oranges. I mean it's just not a patrol vehicle. And then the third one is not just not a patrol vehicle, it's a Tesla, right? So things like the autopilot and the closing and so I mean if you go through that list, I think that you have those three types of issues, and the Blazer should address many of them, right? I mean, because it's going to be custom built, it's going to be not a Tesla, it's going to be a much newer vehicle. So
Yeah.
I think it's useful to separate that, because otherwise, anyway, it's just an idea.
Thank you.
On
Oh.
the second part, on the future, charging, I think it's, well, two things. One is that, and they are kind of related, as you probably know, we're in the middle of a transition on the charging infrastructure. So I believe that the Blazer is using the North American charging standard, the new J3400. So that's a different charging than, it's the same as a Tesla. Well, kind of almost like the same as Tesla, but it's different than all your EVs. So when we're talking about the charging infrastructure, is not just that the police department or Menlo Park, everybody's having the same problem, which is what did you do? Because we have CCS two and
I think Ori mentioned also that we're looking at that, right? That we're trying to future-proof these improvements as much as possible.
yeah.
So we're probably.
It's going to be an interesting challenge, because if you have a vehicle that goes to a charging station, it's either going to be one or the other, or you have an adapter, and all of that's complicated, right?
Yeah, I think the adapters are really gonna be the key, and then
Yeah,
it's,
yeah.
again, right, like the vast majority of the cost for EV charging is not the charger or the cable or the piece that's delivering it. It's all of the infrastructure that you have to
Yeah,
put
yeah,
into the
yeah,
ground
yeah.
and, you know, the electrical infrastructure that supports that. And so that's where, you know, the most exciting part of our EV charging infrastructure plan is gonna be invisible for like
Yeah.
its whole life.
But-
But we'll be able to swap in and out, because we're looking at, you know, like, what are the sizes of the wires that we need to use, and then making sure that, you know, we're upsizing the conduits, as much as
Yeah.
possible.
And as you said, I mean, the microgrid and all the reliability issue. Now,
Right,
the other side of that one, and I think the two are related, that's why I was mentioning it together, is that the Blazer has bidirectional charging and vehicle to load and vehicle to grid. All the Teslas are not going to have it for multiple years
Right.
until several generations from now. But, and the lighting also has it.
Yeah.
So, it seems to me that's something that you can capitalize on, because in the case of an emergency, you can not just help the building, but you can also take your vehicles and help households and neighborhoods. I mean, to me, that's a big advantage of the EVs. In the case of a disaster, you have these vehicles that can go and help people.
We have to operate off of what we learned over this past year.
Yeah.
And, you know, especially in this community with, you know, long-term blackouts and long-term electricity loss, it would be nice to have assets that are actually rolling around and able to help our communities, other than doing what we're doing now, which is to pack some of our patrol cars with some of those mobile chargers so that they can help people in the event of an emergency. It would be nice to be able to actually have an asset that could do that. I completely agree.
Yeah.
And I think that will be one of the advantages of the Lightnings
Yeah.
and like vehicles as they come out.
Yeah, I believe that all the Ultiums support that. So, I mean, that's a new GM part. So kudos to you. I mean, this is great. You guys are very outstanding.
Indeed,
That's-
thank
that's
you
it.
for that comment. Is there any specific type of feedback that you all are looking for? As you are preparing to make a presentation to city council, or did you have any particular questions you wanted us to have?
yeah, I think that in large part, it's understanding kind of where the commission is in terms of kind of like support for the recommendations. If there's, you know, additional questions or things that you'd like us to try to investigate, you know, we can take those down. I think, you know, the helpful comments about the structure of the presentation and kind of, you know, right, like we're very deep in the weeds of this, and so this being an opportunity to share kind of what we've done is also a good opportunity to get feedback and see if there's ways that we could make it better.
Might say just on the last slide about next steps, one of the things that came out of the verbal discussion was kind of to go to keep looking at the market. So beyond just the Blazer, the fact that you've been going to these conferences and talking to other institutions, I think that's really important, because the rate of change in the market is big. And so not just to commit to, it's just a Tesla or Blazer, and those are our only choices. That will be possible.
And going back to what Vice Chair Schmidt said about the case study, I don't know if what you present to city council can essentially be the case study, but that would be a nice way to not have it be two separate things and share them. Can be shared widely as well. Seems like a really great idea.
You know, as a starting point, and then maybe something that's a little bit more, I would say this, a little bit more in the format of entities that study this stuff and are willing to share it. Probably a simplified version for the public. I mean, it just.
Yeah,
I
like
think
more
this is-
details about how to actually go about it and then a summary for city council.
Kind of, yeah. It's like the presentation is a great foundational piece, and then breaking pieces of that off, because like, why aren't we, sorry, I did this on a, sounded like, why aren't we doing this? But I think there's an opportunity to really encourage the public, like, hey, we are innovating here in electric vehicles.
Right. I'm definitely with you on the outlook on that. We haven't even talked about, what we might do to kind of expand the exposure on this. We're a little too close to a couple of places where I know, like national exposure wise, where this would be a great presentation that would be well received and fill the house, so to speak, to talk about it in a panel setting. But that gives us time to polish this, put it together in a way that we can talk about, like, past, present, and future, what we've, how far we've come, what we've done with this particular study, what we have to do next, and where our fingers are to try and stay on top of the game. I think we'll be ready, by this time next year to be moving that to some other forum. And potentially by the end of this year, there's one or two that I know are still like looking for proposals for presentations that we could talk about, that I think would fit, would be a good presentation.
Yeah, and that's more what.
Did I hear correctly that this is the first vehicle patrol in the Bay Area?
City of Fremont has done electric vehicle study, but it was, comparatively around the same size and scale, and they're a much larger agency. So City of Fremont has over 200 sworn police officers. We have 47 authorized sworn. So they're almost 4 times the size of ours, but they really only tested a couple of vehicles. We have many more vehicles that we are constantly adding to the fleet, and we've much more, I think, information that we've collected to give a better picture on, from not just the vehicle efficiency and the greenhouse gas emissions, but the operability and the future of actual utility of these vehicles. So I think there's a big topic to talk about there, where I think we are somewhat in the lead on that. But I think in terms of like who we are as a city, to answer your question, the level of progressiveness that's happening here with regard to environmental awareness and trying to move things and reduce the carbon footprint, to be able to highlight that we're an agency that's not like fighting back against, or a city organization really, that's not fighting back against the recommendations that our constituents are advocating for. We're trying to find ways to fit into that and find ways to kind of work with the flow of that and do our part. And in that sense, I think that we are rather innovative in the field.
Yeah.
And it does deserve some exposure, but I think, here is the first place to do it. We definitely want to get in front of council. We definitely want to answer questions that our local government and our community has, and then we can, move to figure out who else should hear the story.
Yeah, because just to build on that in the 2-second way, that sharing it in conferences, getting into the public sphere and awareness and all that, it actually just helps the whole effort. The fact that there was immense collaboration, that it was thorny problems to solve. The fact that it was a thorny problem to solve is not a bad thing.
Right.
It actually highlights the path we're all on. So anyway, I won't get on a soapbox, but I think that there's an amazing story to tell based on the work you guys have done. And like, we shouldn't hide it under I know you weren't intending it, but there's no reason to keep it secret.
Yeah.
And we're not.
Yeah.
Not looking to do that.
And also what we highlighted here was the Tesla pilot, but you've been doing so many other things as well. So I think the story is much bigger than what we talked about tonight. And we got to a little bit of it, but between the infrastructure and all the other vehicles that are being used, it could be a really great thing to support the whole movement.
Yeah, it's a good story, and we should be telling it, and we are telling it. So I think that's a good thing.
We're honored that it's happening here.
Oh,
Any other things? Let's go to Commissioner McKenna, since you haven't spoken.
Great conversation. I just want to thank Lori for all the work that he did to put together a great presentation and all the work that it took to do that. And to thank Chief Norris for his willingness to just do this pilot program and for your officers to participate in it, which sounds like they're somewhat excited about it in many ways. And thanks to all the other folks at staff that worked on this with you, Lori. Change isn't always free, so there's costs, that the city took to do this, but I think there'll be long-term benefits for that. And these pilot programs, you know, they're not always meant to be a success, but we always learn something from them. And I think you folks in the city have learned a lot from this process. That can benefit other, you know, cities around the country. I think for the most part, it was a success. It sounds like that you really, for the most part, these cars were useful and could be seen as a long-term solution. But at the same time, I think there's a market out there that's just gonna get stronger and stronger. And to that point, I was wondering, you know, I did a little research before this. There's like Oakdale, east of Stockton, Fremont, as you mentioned, South Pasadena, Bargersville, Indiana.
Yeah.
Boulder County in Colorado, or other police departments that have explored these EVs. So I was thinking that maybe as you could get together with your other police departments around the country and maybe exert some influence on manufacturers to say, you know, we're excited, we want this to move forward. We need some tweaks to what your cars are now. We need more options, that sort of thing. Maybe that's already happening. I don't know, but just a thought.
Yeah. So a couple things on that. Number one, I think you're right that we may be influencing the industry as much as we are watching the industry to kind of modulate that. I think it's really important to note that yes, this was a successful study, but you know, part of what made it a successful study is we had officers that said, I can't do this, and stepped away from those cars because they're not what we're looking for or not what those officers are looking for. And even though, you know, in one sense, like we hate to lose someone off of this study, right? But we also need to acknowledge that this is defining some of the things that we need to improve in order to make this transition work. And for this group to be able to say, like, we understand and we can exert a little bit of patience in how we transition this so that we do it right. And so that when we're outfitting our officers into these cars, when this is our mainstream and not an experiment, that we're doing it in a way that our police officers who are putting themselves at risk every day are very confidently getting in these vehicles and taking them out on patrol because they know they're in the right equipment to get the job done. And so, you know, every little bit of this, the pluses and the minuses and the ups and downs, like that all contributes towards that kind of future image of us. And like, I mean, this is 2024. We have another 6 years to that 2030 goal point. Given the way technology advances and given the way that we are starting to evolve now and the percentage of reduced emissions that we're already working with, like we're on an okay path. Like we don't have to look at this as like we've got to just electrify that fleet tomorrow. We don't have to do that, but we can look at it and say we're headed in the right direction.
Yeah, and then Marina.
Just a little bit more appreciation for the city's commitment to staying on track for zero emissions. I think it's always great to have that goal, and there's steps to getting there, but to keep that in mind. And I love the fact that you keep referencing 2030. It's definitely a citywide goal, so I appreciate that. And as I look at our climate action plan, I think, you know, Cat 5 gives me the least concern. I think the city's really making some great progress when it comes to the city operations. So thanks to the city for that too.
Yes, and I'll piggyback off that a little bit, because in our thank yous, I think we did miss that, you know, well, I appreciate the appreciation. It is very much a team effort. You know, there's a lot of collaboration with our team now. And then also, you know, leading up to this point, right, like this pilot was born out of the city council really taking a stand and approving, you know, a substantial amount of city funds to purchasing these 3 vehicles and expanding it from 1 to 3, and, you know, like giving us the go ahead to really, you know, move forward with this pilot, because it took a lot of time. And yeah, continuing to support sustainability is a priority. And so, you know, we do need to make sure that we are sharing the gratitude with the city council as well.
Any other comments from the Commissioner Lynn? Did you have anything?
Nothing bad.
Just had one question about, given the newness of these vehicles, is there a plan to keep an eye on maintenance costs and battery degradation and things like that as they stay in the fleet? Because of course, the maintenance costs are fairly low at the beginning of the life cycle, but as they age and wear and tear, are you planning to keep an eye on that part of the cost envelope as well?
Yeah, I think some of the things that we learned are related to the kind of multiple systems that we have and how to navigate those and how to kind of pull reports from them. So I can say that, you know, we can definitely kind of keep track of that. And I think it's a good idea to kind of continue to monitor, especially if we're looking at kind of this next chapter, right? Like as we're looking at the performance of the Blazer, we can kind of use the comparisons to the Teslas, which will still be in operation. And then of course, to our baseline Explorers.
Yeah, I think, because I think you said it, like availability of parts, cost to maintain, cost to service regularly, but also just to maintain it so it goes wrong. I mean, there's other factors that could be interesting to keep in mind. Yeah, so keep in mind.
Indeed. Anything else? So I don't know if we need a motion for this. I think you all got the feedback that you needed, yes.
Yes. I think so. I'm just trying to rack my brain a little bit, and I'm just gonna return to the agenda to confirm the format for this, so we don't move forward, missing an opportunity. Okay. Yeah, so it's just receiving it, an update. So yes, thank you for the feedback, and we'll certainly let the commission know as this goes forward, the informational item goes forward to the city council in the coming months.
Great, very exciting.
Awesome.
All right, well, how about we take a 5-minute pause? And thank you again, Chief Norris, good to see you. And let's reconvene at 7:40, so like 7 minutes. 7 minutes.
And audio.
And the audio.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. We are on to agenda item C3, which is hearing a presentation from the EV Ad Hoc Subcommittee on CAP Strategy 2 and 3 for the 2025 to 2030 scope. So they have a presentation which they'll take us through. I'm going to encourage the rest of the commissioners to allow them to complete their presentation. Please make notes of any questions that you have, and we'll do the clarifying questions after. And then we'll take public comment. So clarifying questions again are to make sure that you understood the presentation. Any additional ideas that you have, we can say for the more open conversation after. Does that work?
Sure.
All right. Well, let us go to the presentation then.
Yes, let us.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then if I start to look, I just. Yeah.
Okay.
Ready? Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So, I'm gonna kick off and then I'm gonna do the first few slides and then, Commissioner Kissel will do the bring us home set of slides. So we were looking at CAP 2 and CAP 3, or if you go to the first one, it's actually got a recap of the recommendations themselves. But the scope of the things we were looking at were really, as a refresher to everyone, to research and grants in a couple of different categories that could be tackled over time, collecting additional ideas on implementation that would be useful, and then also identifying partners who can support the city's EV and EV charging infrastructure goals. And CAP 2 and CAP 3 are pretty straightforward. 2 is really around the thing you see there on the left, the citywide goal for increasing EVs themselves and the purchase of new vehicles. And then CAP 3 is really around the charging infrastructure that is critical for that, and with a focus on multifamily and commercial properties. So, and then the listing of the goals there in the different measurements of that. So we spent the last sort of 4 or 5 months doing some research, talking and discussing, and kind of coming up with a set of recommendations that we'll go through just a minute. So next slide. So a couple of pieces of information here, which I won't read all of this, but just to give everybody a sense, is we weren't approaching this from a position of trying to invent all this stuff from scratch. The city had done a lot of work already, and there were a series of progress reports that we pulled some data from here that we thought would be interesting to include. The city did an electric vehicle charging gap analysis in the fall 2020, and there were some key findings that really lined up with some of the recommendations that you're going to hear in a few minutes. But that, it's not typically a problem for single family homes, is one key finding, and it's a little more problematic for multifamily homes and properties. So that's one thing that we really dove into as we started talking about this. And then, I don't think it's a mystery to anybody that's hearing this, but there are lots of public EV charging spaces available, but it's a very limited number of sites. So part of the challenge of the infrastructure question is, how do we spread this more across the city as opposed to a number of concentrated sites? And as you see some of the recommendations, we're looking at how do we start to pepper this across the city. And then, from a multifamily point of view, there's very few multifamily properties that have charging available, which is pretty problematic. So that was all from the fall 2020 city staff analysis. And then just as a reminder, in August of 2020, the city council did approve a program for some of these things with the it's a permit fee waiver and credit program to incentivize some of these projects for EV charging. And that included the relevant building codes and things like that. So it won't go into a lot of details, but there's substantial work that's already been done to get us to this point. The other thing, same thing here. I think there's something that happened in October 2021, where the city continued to monitor and look at the multifamily property challenge. I think that, I don't think that just the city permit piece really moved the needle, was my impression. And Ori, obviously, in the conversation, we can hear more about that. But I think just that single change didn't really prompt people to make the changes that we were looking for. So we kind of built off of that idea that there's other things we needed to be doing. And then there was a helpful piece that we found from fairly recently, May 2023, that the city of San Carlos had some matching incentives that we might want to consider. And we did, Commissioner Kissel and I did kind of look at a similar model, but this matching incentive for PCE's EV charging rebate. So that really, those 2 pages kind of inspired our thinking and gave us a baseline of the report themselves. Before we go to the next slide. So I wanted to skip over those to just really get into the meat of what we're thinking might be a way to start to revise CAP 3 and CAP 2 and CAP 3 as we look forward to the next few years. First recommendations, something I think we talked about a little bit, is really focusing on apartments and especially larger complexes, small businesses and city buildings. This idea of let's focus on the things that are smaller, measurable, show an impact and measure progress. I know everybody heard me rant a little bit about like, let's count. You know, this is the group of buildings and businesses and entities that it's going to be fairly easy to count, which we can use to then encourage the harder discussions with single family homes and some of the other things. So showing progress here feels like a strong recommendation because we can count it and we can show good progress. The second, I'm not sure what happened to the numbering, but that should be number 2 there. Yeah, 111.
It just changed.
Yeah, it's weird. On the second one, I think we can talk about this in more detail, but this idea that let's not use very limited city resources to encourage EV purchases, which is a lot of CAP 3. Let's partner to do that because there's a lot of people out there, a lot of entities, a lot of manufacturers. There's a couple of potential partners that we found. They're already promoting EV purchasing as a way of selling their products or encouraging the transition to green. So what we were thinking is let's use limited city resources to do the part that the city does really well, which is the only thing that they can do well, which is focus on EV charging. Because if we leverage partners on the purchase of vehicle side, then it allows the city to free up its resources and focus on getting L1 and L2 chargers built. And then we can talk about the difference, and Brian's going to cover this, about the difference between L1 and L2 chargers and not really necessarily DC fast chargers. But the main thing here in this middle section is let's expend less city resources encouraging EV purchases. Let's find partners who are already doing that. Let's really double down on getting the infrastructure built and getting it in these places mentioned in recommendation number 1 up there. And in the third recommendation, number 1, the focus on informing stakeholders. What we really learned through this, and Brian can back me up, is there are a lot of incentives out there. So the nice thing is the city doesn't have to do it alone. He's going to talk a little bit about the PCE research that we did, but looking at, let's find a way to do an outreach campaign that emphasizes current incentives, give a little bit of this idea of fear of missing out, because those incentives probably won't last forever. But find these potential partners for L1 and L2 charging that are doing this kind of things. And we've got a few of those identified. And then obviously where that doesn't go far enough and where we want to utilize a wider variety of grants, we can start to do that stuff as well. So in a nutshell, those are the summaries of our 3 recommendations there. Focus on the right set of infrastructure, focus on charging, and work with partners to incentivize purchases, And then really double down on informing stakeholders about the current incentives that we think could be stacked pretty easily.
Just one clarification with that added there. So in the first point, we talked about focusing on apartments. We didn't explicitly say, let's not focus on residential.
Yeah.
So in the second part, we talked about, focusing on L1, L2, not DC fast charging. So I think it's important for us as an EQC in general to think about where's the bang for the buck and what can the city in particular do relative to all the other initiatives that are underway at the state, federal level, in commercial industry, et cetera. And so I think it's really important as we make all of our recommendations to the city to think about what not to do, because there's a lot of things we could do. And so part of what we do in this subcommittee was to explicitly say where the areas that we're recommending not to focus.
So I think, go ahead, Ori, with the next one. It's me, right? So, yeah, because it's my session
Your day.
counting, yes. Ori was really helpful in pointing us towards some resources that had existed before. So this table was pulled from a city staff report in 2020 that I mentioned earlier. So this goes to the power of being able to count stuff, right? If you know the specific number of units, even if you're off by, a little bit, this just shows, the idea that we can, in the multifamily category, which is the first column there, we know what the stock is, and it's a reachable number. A lot of these are a reachable number of folks. So as Brian said, it's not that we don't want to work on single family homes and condos, but what we're trying to get to is let's start to notch some victories in these areas where we know it's a little more complicated. The city can have a lot more influence, and we're kind of knocking out one section of the map, so to speak, which then allows us to kind of build on that and get it back into single family home discussions and stuff like that. So the things on the left there really are some of the pieces that we looked at, which is saying there are sufficient incentives and information available to potential EV purchasers. So people who want to purchase a vehicle, there's a lot out there already, right? The EV owners have the motivation and information to get their chargers. The EV owners that are out there today, it's the condos and the other entities that are fairly complex that we're trying to navigate through here. So the recommendation is look at an inventory of opportunities that we really want to go after in a targeted way and really share the incentives with them and make sure they understand this is a very opportune time, almost a zero cost time. I don't want to say that, that's a little too far, but a very low cost time to get this infrastructure in place for the people who own these multifamily properties. So that's really the message here is it's an opportune time for apartments, small businesses, and city buildings to get this work done.
One overlay to that too, that we'll talk about some later slides. The reason we're recommending focusing not on condos is because the L1, L2 vendors that have tried to get into condos, there's all this politics.
It's super
Just not worth
complicated. It's
the
super
effort.
complicated.
The second part is the differentiation between large apartment complexes and small apartment complexes. Again, what we heard from both PCE as well as the L1, L2 charger manufacturers was the small property owners are so penny wise, pound foolish, that they just can't get it done. It's not worth their effort to try to go in and sell into these small apartment complexes, whereas the large apartment complexes, which are professionally managed and do the economic analysis and the market competitive analysis, they're much more receptive. So as far as where to pick your battles, it should be in the larger units. And hopefully that will then propagate interest in the smaller, because they'll have to then compete with the larger apartment complexes.
We're holding
Is it
up
okay?
questions for later. No, we're gonna let them do their thing. Make a note and we'll come back to you.
Okay.
The thing I love
Well,
too,
my question was, can I ask now? The answer is no. Appreciate
but
it.
the nice thing is, I also love that we were following the presentation we just had, because I think if we start with a smaller inventory of opportunities, that's also a learning opportunity. You know, it's what does it take to get to folks, what's gonna work, what doesn't work. Not every lesson's gonna be applicable for every property type, but I love the fact that we could treat this as a bit of a learning opportunity as well. Corey, I think, for the sake of time, if this is you, yeah?
Okay.
Ryan, over you.
Sure, I'll take it. So one of the questions was, you know, between AC and DC, fast charging, you know, where should we focus our efforts? And, as Commissioner Schmidt said earlier, historically, we've been focused kind of at the federal and state level on DC fast charging, you know, along highway networks. And that's great for people who are traveling long distances, but for local community usage and adoption, we really need to get stuff on site for the EV owners. So getting them in the apartment complexes, as opposed to having to drive, you know, 10, 15 minutes and the charger not being available or not working or whatever. The way you're really going to drive adoption is to have them on premise. And one of the things that we learned through the outreach that we did was that the on-premise L1, L2 chargers are much more cost-effective and available, and in some cases are almost free to the property owner with the subsidies that are available today. You can put in L1 chargers at every parking spot for, I forget, well, we'll get the numbers later, but it's some very de minimis cost. Now, even with that, what we found in talking to both of the PCE folks as well as the charger manufacturers was, again, for the smaller folks, even if you made a compelling economic argument, they were just like, I'm not interested. Whereas the larger apartment complexes are. So that was, you know, part of the reason why we came back and said, look, let's not focus on putting in a bunch of DC fast chargers. Let's find a more cost-effective, distributed, easily available solution. Oh, so this is the leveraging partnership to prompt EV purchases. So this, to Commissioner Smith's point is, there's a lot going on already to kind of encourage the market to buy chargers, to buy EVs. But one of the blockers is if you don't have sufficient charging infrastructure, even if the EV on its own makes sense, if you don't have available cost-effective chargers, you know, so we want to focus on that part of the equation.
One, just to build off of what Commissioner Kissel said, you know, for example, like Terra, you know, really well-respected nonprofit, works in our area. I think the city's actually partnered with them before, I'm not 100% sure. They have a very substantial program to educate consumers. They have educational resources already developed. City doesn't have to do that. They have webinars in multiple languages. City wouldn't have to do that. They have an EV evangelist program, incentive clinics. They have a whole, you know, and this isn't even a manufacturer. This is a nonprofit entity who has a whole suite of tools that the city wouldn't have to develop on their own to incentivize citizens. We would just need to figure out, could we partner with Actera and amplify what they do and bring it to the city in a more consistent way. So they're a pretty good example of folks out there already incentivizing people, and they already have the tools to do that. Really, we just need to find some new partnership opportunities with the city, and they're very open to, you know, partnering on grants and joint campaigns and things like that, for example.
Okay, right. Okay, so I kind of talked ahead of this, but yeah. So here are some kind of more detailed summary of why L1, L2. And I'll let you guys read it. I'm going to read it to you. This was from PCE, kind of their recommendation, how we should approach the problem. What I don't think is actually in here, but the cost of the level 3 DC fast chargers is so much higher. Yeah, you know, from a bang from the buck and from the utility to the EV owner. It's just so much more compelling to go after L1, L2.
It reminded me too, they have a modeling tool. I think you need was the modeling tool. Anyway, they had a modeling tool where they did this for us, so it wasn't, Brian and I made enough numbers, they ran the numbers for us to say, hey, this is how we could blanket Menlo Park with.
Yeah, PCE did the study, but I think they rightly used third-party tool that would analysis. Okay, next slide. Okay, so these are other, incentive programs that are out there. That, we don't have to come up with the money for, we don't have to educate people on. Now, when I say we don't have to educate, I think one of the recommendations that you'll see is there is still a void of connectivity between the programs and the people. So whatever the city can do, it's ongoing communications with residents to make them aware of the various programs is something we should do as opposed to trying to create new programs ourselves or fund incentives ourselves. To the extent we have another channel to reach our citizens, that's what we should try to do, is to amplify the resources and the information about programs, technical assistance, incentives that are available. Okay, so one of the things we also asked PCE about in general is relative to what organizations like PCE or BACMed or state programs are doing, what should individual cities be doing? And they said, gosh, the one thing that cities are uniquely positioned to do is address building codes. So anything you can do with building codes and permitting processes, et cetera, to remove friction from the process, either cost or kind of streamlining is a good thing to do. And so they listed a number of programs that are being trialed or in production that we should consider as well. So again, I'll let you read them, and people, ask questions as we go through them. So for example, in the second bullet point, it might not be obvious, but the current code requires multifamily properties to make their parking spots EV capable, but it doesn't make them EV charge enabled, right? So that's a code change we could make for new construction for apartment complexes. Is not only do you have to make them capable, you actually have to put in some ports. And maybe it's one port for every 3 cars or one port for every, and the nice thing is manufacturers have different approaches. Like, I remember who mentioned it earlier, but there are these ones where there's a battery charger installed in the device so that you can charge it during the day, so that when the homeowner or the apartment renter comes home, they can get L2 charging, even though they don't have to put in L2 charging infrastructure. So it makes it more cost effective for the property owner to offer L2 charging to the homeowner through these batteries. The other one is one of the vendors has a 2-tier deployment program where they wire it all up and there's hardware installed, but they don't put the full cost of the charger where they actually mount the charger and the cable until the renter actually needs it. So it's a 2-part process. So you don't have to bear all of the costs up front. So things that we can do as a city is to say, okay, we're not going to have you bear the full cost. You're not going to have to do L2 charging. You just have to pay for L1 charging. In most cases, you may already have sufficient electric capacity to do that, right? Here's a vendor that does that. Or if you want to have this other option where you're going to wire them all up, but you're not going to have to pay the cost to put the charger and the cable in, you can only put them in over time. It gives the property owner options to when and how they're going to deploy it, at what cost. And the city can kind of dictate those things. And so we would advocate looking at those and seeing which ones of those we think can help us. It's the whole reach code concept applied to EV charging infrastructure.
Just one small thing to add to, and Ori, it's more for you and the team to think about is, just like we'd recommend a partner like Iterra, who already has a lot of infrastructure, it's a way to accelerate and be efficient. PCE was also incredibly helpful. So we met Philip on the call. Well, I think we met him a couple times and you were already partnered with him, and the whole thing about building codes, we know that's a step above, but, you know, another really good partner in PCE, and they're willing to, you know, help us get there if there are other learnings that we can bring into a potential building code discussion. This part went a little bit beyond what we were looking at as a subcommittee, but the conversation with Bill was really valuable, and this was an extra set of recommendations. So I'd say, you know, it might be worth opening that discussion up to see if it's interesting, because Philip was, as helpful as he's probably already been all the way through.
And to the point where he actually listed other municipalities that are doing it. So if one of these appeals to us, I'm sure you can make introductions to people in those municipalities who've deployed these approaches to see what process they used, how the citizens reacted to the programs, how the property owners reacted to the programs, et cetera. So as we're finding through a lot of the work I think we're doing in EQC, PCE is a great resource for us.
And coupled with the fact that it's fairly cost neutral at this point, you know, this could be a good time to do this, because obviously getting it written into code at a time when it's very low cost is probably much easier than the time when it costs a ton, so.
Yeah, and maybe it's in a later slide, but I think it was something like $300 per parking spot to put this in, which was just amazing.
It was,
Yeah, we already covered it. All right, let's see. Yeah, so this is to the point, you know, we don't have to create programs. We just need to communicate to our citizens what the programs, what the incentives are. And quite frankly, I don't know how we do that, because, I mean, I talk to most of my neighbors, they don't go to the city website. Right, so unless you're already highly motivated and you're looking, somehow we have to figure out how to get the word out. I've been a strong advocate of, like, do we have a database of all of our citizens with their phone numbers, and, you know, opt in for text and get their email addresses and opt in for email, so we can get this word out. Because until we do that, and we can build a great data resource on the city website, but if nobody ever comes there, it's not really gonna help.
well, those 4 sub-bullets are ideas. Like, for example, I think Commissioner McKenna and 350 did a great job promoting it.
Yes.
Tons of attention. So there are techniques that have been working to promote other things. So beyond just the city website, like Brian is saying, like there are other ways to really get the word out that we could adopt as part of the outreach campaign. Not that I'm advocating going out and putting up flyers again, but you know, it worked to get a lot of people to come to the Earth Day event, for example.
And this is just kind of a summary of some of the partners that we've talked to, and we've kind of highlighted here. Municipal Clean Energy, clearly the strongest one, but like, for example, Orange and EV Match, or some of these L1, L2 charger manufacturers who have very cost-effective distributed programs. So it's not just one single central location. It's like blanket every parking spot in every apartment complex. That's kind of their goal. And they were the ones that told us, don't go after the mom and pop, you know, duplex, fourplexes, go after the more professionally managed, 10 plus apartment complexes. Okay, next slide. I think that, yeah, this is just a summary of the various grants that are available. And so this would be part of the communications program. It's like, how do we get the word out to people? And what's encouraging to see is there are starting to be, even the auto dealers are provide. So there's have you guys ever heard of JD Power? They're big auto data. They bought a company called, anyway, they built an entire database of all the federal, state, local, and utility incentive programs for EVs or EV chargers. And when you go to, and now they're starting to partner with manufacturers. So when you go to, you know, the Tesla website or the GM website and go to their EV section, you can actually plug in your zip code, your marital status, your income, and it'll tell you what you qualify for, and you know, take you to the website for those things. So it's starting to happen organically, especially with the commercial organizations like the EV manufacturers, EV charger manufacturers. But we can supplement that to the extent we have. The city does and should have a trusted relationship with our citizens, right? And so you might always question the auto manufacturer, whether they're self-serving, right? But if you come to the city and the city has these resources, hopefully it'll seem more credible.
And just a quick side note, Ori, for you, but also for the wider team here, you know, we were debating how to capture the grants. If you go on grants.gov, it gives you every federal grant from every agency. We didn't, because those are rolling and, you know, we didn't sort of say, well, we should definitely go for this one, we should definitely go for that. We don't know what the capabilities to go for these things are and everything else, but this just illustrates the idea that there is money out there through various federal agencies. There's some of the statewide things that we found there. I think just going through and having once we get to a point of looking at what we want to recommend for CAP 2 and CAP 3 moving forward, there are grant opportunities that are out there at multiple levels that we can go and find. So this was meant to be a little bit more of an example of that kind of stuff versus go for these 4, because, you know, the deadlines have passed probably on 3 of them.
And another thing that is, that stands out is the number of incentive programs for what were called LMI, low to moderate income families,
Yeah.
are much more substantial. Like, so the $7,500 federal credit, you know, applies at a certain income level. And I think you'll find a lot of the state and local programs also have income tiered benefits based on your level of need. And so the people who kind of need it most have the potential maximum benefit. And so being able to reach out to that portion of our community who are going to benefit from EVs and may not be aware that they're even economically viable. So the more we can communicate that, the better. That's fun. So, all right, now all those pent up questions.
All right, thank you both. It's very exciting to see the results of your all's work. So thank you for doing that, and for your very clear presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Always got to do something. Yeah, somebody got to go to the door. Trick or treater.
Yeah, this is perfect.
I'm glad we were here.
Yeah.
Sure.
All right, we're having an Amazon delivery here at the city offices for those of you who are participating online. So sorry for the delay here. But maybe as I was thinking about how we might want to structure our initial clarifying questions. Is that maybe we can, because you have 3 recommendations, maybe we
Go back to
can,
that slide.
maybe we can go back to that slide and then maybe focus on each one at a time.
Is it
There you go.
That's the one I was thinking
the
of.
top 1 priorities?
Yeah, so this is the time for clarifying questions, and then we'll have public comment, and then we'll come back to our more open conversations and come to a recommendation that we want to make. And so, thank you again. And I have questions for sure, but does anybody else have any before?
I have clarifying questions, but after you.
Okay, so for the first one, focusing on, I think I heard, maybe it would help to go to the slide that has the detailed ones, the detailed about the housing stock here. It was unclear to me where you wanted that line drawn. Based on a later comment from Commissioner Kissel, it seemed like maybe we'd focus at the,
10 and up.
10 and up, so the bottom 3.
Yeah. I mean, we,
Groupings.
until you asked the question, I don't think we had been that explicit, but I wouldn't recommend going below 10. I mean, you could start at 20. But I just wouldn't go below 10.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. That was my only question about recommendation number 1. Did anybody else have a question about recommendation number 1?
I had the same, sorry,
You have the same one?
I
Yeah,
had the same question, so you answered that one. I had a question on here, on this slide, actually. Where you say focus on EV charging. There are several ways of interpreting that. One is how many I mean, I understand the big picture, but as far as measuring, one can measure the number of EV chargers that exist. Did one measure how many EV chargers are actually functioning as opposed to broken?
Right.
And then the other one is how many of them are being used. So those are three different metrics.
I don't think we got to that level of detail, right? It was more, I think the guidance here, and Brian, please jump in, is like, because there were two cap goals in the one discussion, and cap 2 was about EV purchases.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And cap 3 was charging, it's like, hey, let's not worry about cap 2 as a city. Let's not expend a bunch of resources, let's partner for cap 2, and to your point, let's figure out cap 3 at the level of detail I think you're talking about.
Yeah, I think it's important to think about which one of the three, because, I mean, as all of us who have EV cars, you know, the fact that the charger is there, it doesn't matter if it's not working.
There's available, right? So it might not be,
Yeah.
it might be working, but there's 3 people queued up to use it.
Well, that's the other one.
Right, so,
And I think we focused probably primarily on installation. I mean, to be fair, we sort of said, well, what's it gonna take to get them?
That would be, I
deployed in the
mean,
first
from a
place, right?
practical perspective, that might be the right thing to do, but I mean, I think that at least keeping the three in mind.
Yeah.
So that's all I had on that.
Cool. Was that regarding 1 or number 2?
Two.
That was 2. Okay. So the focus on EV charging, not purchases. So what I'm hearing as I begin to form a recommendation.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought that was already on one, my bad.
That's okay. It's confusing because they're all the same number.
Yeah.
Is that for cap 2, because I think we're not changing the climate action plan. It's more about the strategies. So cap 2 is, for cap 2, let's partner with organizations that are already existing, and, you know, we can amplify their messaging to encourage people to buy EVs.
yes.
Kind of done. And then cap 3 in terms of EV charging. Is where most of the effort is here.
Where the city would probably devote, more energy
Yeah.
to build off of what Orion have already done,
Yeah,
you know, like partner, maybe put some money in, go for some grants together for cap 2. There's still be a little bit of effort there. It's not
Okay.
just leave it to partners. I think it's more, the city doesn't have to invent stuff themselves.
okay, so that, I'm just wanting to clarify about that. Oh, sorry, are we in discussion?
Well,
We kind of went into discussion, didn't we?
yeah, I guess like one, maybe just like overarching clarifying question is like, if we just kind of, go back, right? Because like we have some of these things in an existing recommendation from the commission on cap 2 and cap 3.
Yeah.
Like the final point of the commission recommendation, I think was August, so don't blame anybody for, you know, forgetting all that great work we did then, but like the final point was to kind of get these 3 ones of information from the subcommittee. So I think, yeah, I just wanted to kind of like reintroduce that we don't need to look at the kind of overall recommendation for cap 2 and 3, because we have several bullet points about that and kind of focusing the scope for 2025 to 2030. But like if we can kind of retool as we're thinking about clarifying questions, and then ultimately the motion to be
So you're talking
focused
about
on
the
the scope.
3 on the left-hand side,
Correct. Yeah,
researching grants, collecting additional ideas, and identifying partners. Okay.
right. So, yeah, I just wanted to kind of like bring us back to that, because I think
Yeah,
it could help.
Yes, I think in the later slides, we do identify the various grants, programs that are available, and you're probably aware of them already. Additional ideas, I think that the additional ideas are more in the area of emphasis. Where the city, you know, kind of gets the most bang for the buck, or what the city is uniquely positioned to do. And then identifying partners, we laid them out in the last few slides.
Particularly PCE, and particularly probably Actera. Actera for cap 2, because they've got a lot of that. And definitely PCE, take a serious double look at them first.
Well, and then the 2 L1, L2 charger manufacturers, which, you know, we had found, and in parallel, PCE said they had been talking to them and are doing some trials with them. So I think we've covered those topics.
Well, Ori, thanks for bringing us back to the
The original goal.
subcommittee scope. Any other, yeah,
Clarifying question on idea number 2, you list 2 different ways to get 100% EV fleet. Are there total costs associated with that?
Is this number 2 here?
It's on
this-
slide number
this
9.
Slide number 9.
So it's part of idea 2. So you basically identify 2 ways to get to 100%. Was there a total cost associated with each option regardless of who pays for it?
There might have been. We go back.
Okay.
I don't remember.
I don't remember him costing it out. I mean, I think we could go back to PCE and ask what that might look like.
Okay.
I mean, what I do remember taking away was, it's much more cost effective to do the L1 or 2 chargers to get the coverage that you need and the capacity that you need than buying a bunch of expensive DC fast chargers.
Makes sense. Thanks.
okay. I'm appreciating the clarity and the focus and the, we're not gonna do X, or we're not gonna recommend X, we're gonna focus elsewhere. One other. With regard to the third recommendation, you were saying informing about incentives. I was curious if you were wanting to focus on incentives for purchasing vehicles or for installing charging infrastructure, or both, depending on who we're targeting in the communication.
I think both, but kind of doubling down on the incentives for the multifamily apartment complex owners. Because those incentives are there today, they're much more cost-effective L1, L2 solutions than there probably were a few years ago. And so the apartment owners aren't aware of what the technology is and what the incentives are. So at the margin, I would say emphasizing communication of those incentives and those manufacturing programs is probably the bigger benefit.
Right, okay, those are my clarifying questions. Any others? All right, then, let us go to public comment. Ori, would you call for public comment?
Yes, thank you, Chair Headley and members of the commission. And to members of the public who are joining us remotely. If you would like to provide public comment on this item, and you're joining virtually, please activate your raised hand feature, or if you're calling in, please press *9. And we will enable your ability to share that public comment for 3 minutes on this item. So I'm not seeing any raised hands or callers at this time. So I can return it to you, Chair Headley.
Okay, thank you. All right, so it's now open for discussion of the EQC.
Do you want to structure like before going by?
I think it kind of makes sense. Do you like that?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe,
Go back to slide, what is it?
yeah, that one slide was helpful.
The 3 level.
Yeah,
Priority.
The 3 ones,
priority.
one.
Yeah.
Somehow in translation.
the other thing too, just maybe before we get into our the detailed discussion, I'm wondering if Liz is available to capture notes. And at some point she can share them like as it starts to coalesce. But maybe not immediately like having them visible, because I think we still need the slides.
Right, so let me just check on that. Oops. Okay, I have a thumbs up from Liz that she is working on the notes, and then if it would be helpful for framing the discussion, I can also Liz pulled up the minutes from the last meeting that we talked about this from August. Would that be of interest to see kind of like what the recommendation was, so we can kind of get a better framing for kind of which ideas are actually additional ideas and which ideas are kind of maybe ideas that we already had?
That seems reasonable.
Okay,
So maybe we go to that and then we'll go to your comments, Commissioner Felipe first. Does that seem?
And Lori, is an additional contextual thing, because you reminded me, is what we discussed before plus this gonna be the 1 + 2 equals the third part, which is putting this forward as the changes for 2 and 3, for cap 2 and 3? Like, there's not additional things we need to discuss. Once we're comfortable with this, that we kind of check the box of 2 and 3.
I believe so. I think that was our intent.
Okay.
Clarifying question on this.
Yeah.
Very basic question. I should know the answer. What's the time frame for that we're considering this?
2025 to 2030
Okay.
implementation.
So this is the
Yeah,
next
okay.
evolution of
Yeah, I did
that
2030.
we're doing with all the other
2030,
capital, but.
Yeah,
Okay, we're just-
with the goal of getting to our
Yeah.
cap goal of 2030.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so new share. So bear with me just for a moment. And I will just read through, these are the minutes from, again, August 16th meeting. And I can just read them out loud, so then it's a little bit easier, we don't have to zoom in. But the first is to provide education and outreach regarding electric vehicles, affordability and incentives. Second is to aggregate funding for EV charging from federal, state, local, and utility, especially for low-income housing. To focus on increasing access to EV charging at home through partnerships, policy, and programs. Increase the amount of public charging available at city-owned properties and consider future development plans. Next was to explore incentive-based rules such as direct install programs. Next was partner with public agencies and private property owners to install EV charging. Consider removing other fees from city-owned charging and source alternative funding to support operation, maintenance, and additional chargers. Track EVs by income level and charging availability. Reach codes for EV charging for existing buildings. And then the final one was form a subcommittee that includes Commissioner Schmidt and Kissel to research grants related to workforce, education, and infrastructure that can be tracked long-term. Collect additional ideas on implementation and identify partners to be presented in December or January, which is where we are.
Thank you. Yeah, that's super helpful. Can you leave that up momentarily for us?
Yes,
All right.
I can try to make it bigger too.
So here's what I'm hearing, like, I think you guys have done a great job of connecting with partners and identifying who the key partners would be as we do this, so that's awesome. And the resources for the grants that the city can go after and or our partners. And then the other thing I'm hearing is, instead of trying to boil the ocean and having the city try to get EV charging everywhere, it's let's focus on this particular subset of multifamily properties, 10 units and above, and really like count that, go after that, target our communications and incentives around, in addition to the other pieces that we are doing around the reach codes, which it's nice to know that that's already here, and you are reinforcing like, yes, that would be a good thing for us to do. So that's the main, I'm hearing a focus.
Yeah.
Is that, am I getting that right?
A focus on 2 fronts, right? One is on the infrastructure. There's 2 levels of narrowing. Partner on the EV purchasing side, cap 2.
Yeah.
So narrow in on who are the partners who already have educational materials, webinars.
Yeah.
Like Actera, but there's probably a few more. Focus on them and figure out ways to maybe work on, amplify them or work on grants with them or whatever it is. Don't try to create materials for cap 2 on our own. There's also vehicle manufacturers who have that kind of stuff. So that minimizes the impact on city resources, hopefully. But then to your point, and then the second level of narrowing is on the charging infrastructure, which could be really broad if we wanted it to be.
Yeah.
But it sounds like we're gravitating toward city charging infrastructure, some other work that Ori's doing, plus this multifamily unit, save residential for later, because it's a complex can of worms. So there's two levels of narrowing. Double down on cap three with city resources is the first narrow, and the second narrow is a subset of buildings in cap three.
Yeah, because single family homes and condo owners have, if they want to buy an EV, they have the incentive to do their own thing. But I think it's harder for people who are renting to advocate themselves, so.
And it's a bigger draw on city resources to reach out to them and figure it out. And so we're trying to encourage the city to find its sweet spots because it should accelerate.
It's kind of like we found in decarbonization, like going after the commercial spaces as a bigger bang for the buck than going after the residential spaces.
All right, let's go here.
And when you were talking about narrowing, I think that you also emphasize narrowing on L1 and L2.
Yes, sorry, that's the third level of narrow, right? Is-
Because I want to follow up on that.
Yeah, we learned, because that, as we research this, we realize that there's lots of avenues to go down with all of this stuff. And we'll make a lot of progress if we can notch some victories, count them, get people really excited about it. And then I think it'll be easier to have some of these discussions, so.
But so one other, I mean, I'll throw it after the presentation, so, Commissioner Schmidt and I kind of been following what's happening with electric utility rates. And, part of the challenge, and I think I brought this up in one of the earlier QC meetings, is it starts to change the economics of electrification of home and cars when electric rates go up so dramatically. And so we've been trading some emails back and forth about how we might partner with other cities to start working harder with our legislators and CPUC and the utilities to get our costs under control, because we can do all these things, but if electric rates go through the roof, and citizens are going to make economic choices, not ecological choices. And so I don't know, when or how we wedge that in, but given that this is for 25 and beyond, I would say, we ought to start thinking about how we can partner with other cities to advocate at the state level to get electric rates under control, because otherwise it undermines what we're trying to do.
And to build on that, in case you're not following, and we'll be able to potentially come back as, Single Nate Berman it was literally something today about talking to PG&E, for example, about their rate hikes and all that. So there are other pieces, although we're talking about narrowing, if we're not on top of this stuff, there'll just be other factors that put all this good work to, push it out and make it not attractive. So
apologies for not getting in the presentation, but it literally just, it's boiled up in the public press. And I think just all of us, getting our January bills and looking and going, my bill went up 30%.
Yeah, I'm personally very, very interested in this one. I would love to have that conversation at some point. It seems a bit extremely important, but a bit separate from.
Correct. That's why it wasn't kind of.
Yeah, and I agree. This is critical.
We'll need to talk to the city about partnering with other cities, because just one.
Yeah, Menlo Park won't be able to move the needle. Okay, to get, all of them.
Well,
in California.
It's extremely as you know. Okay.
Anyway.
Okay, any other comments, questions?
So I have comments on number one. We were back to number one?
Yeah,
Okay. So I have a theme that I'll get back to it later, but if we can go back to one. And it's
Number
tying.
one this list or number one? Sorry.
Your list.
Okay.
So and this is related to the level one. And you're talking about, this one talks about city buildings. Something that I would like to put at least the B in our bonnet is that a proper English saying?
Yeah.
Is street charter. Because there have been multiple attempts in different places about making chargers available in every city lighting. Now, there is an interesting technical change happening, which is and we'll go back to that one later, is this new standard, the J3400, which is the new, North American, connector standard, the Tesla thingy. When we talk about that, we normally talk about the DC side of that, the fast charger. But they also have the level 1 and level 2. And the part of level 1 and level 2 for that standard, and that's just evolving, right? Is that it's a carry on charger, your own cable. So you bring your cable, which is common in Europe, is not common here. But you bring your own cable, you full plug it in. And then you have, so that makes the dynamic of actually having chargers everywhere much more feasible, because the cable is expensive and the cable can be stolen. But if you think about it, you park in the street in downtown Palo Alto, and then you.
Let's sit down in Palo.
Yeah, well, that doesn't charge it, and then you charge it, right? It's like, I mean, I think that actually might be
So
feasible.
are you aware of any manufacturers who are offering solutions?
That's why I asked about the time frame, right? I mean, we're talking about, in the time frame of, that we're talking about, this is going to happen. Because the J34, all of them cars from now on are going to be using that connector. All the new cars are going to accept level 1, level 2 that way. It's something that I think that it hasn't really solidified,
And
but I
given
think
that, you know, most streets have power for lights. You know,
Exactly.
Overhead lights, you just.
Yeah,
tie into
you
that
just
network.
pick up
You have
I
to
mean,
put in
just-
a Billing management.
just level, well, it might be cheap enough that we don't have to build it. Might be free.
Okay.
Well, I mean, if at level 1,
Yeah.
not level 2, but level 1, it's just charging.
But you prompted another thought that connects to some budget discussions we had earlier. You know, the planning for the 2025 budget is here, it's March. And so I think you prompted a really interesting thought, which is, I really love the fact that the Tesla pilot came before, because what that tells us is, let's start out where we are, let's learn a little bit, let's evolve, let's start out, let's evolve. And I'm not saying we're taking it incrementally. I think I'd recommend we look at this as the plan for 2025, but then we keep open for 2026 to see how other technologies start to emerge, but we get some money in the budget for offsetting some of these incentives, and we start down this path, and then every year we're kind of looking at, do we need to make adjustments because the technology has evolved to the point where we feel comfortable adding it in, right? But always putting a little bit of money in the budget to make some of these things happen, and then keeping abreast of the technology evolution so we can adjust if we.
Yeah, mostly it's just to think about it. I mean, if you think about it, in a parking place that you can only be there 2 hours, level 1 charging, that's very little money,
Right.
electrical wise.
But it's also very little range.
Oh, that's okay,
2 hours
but then
available.
people just go there and charge it, right? So it's like, anyhow, it's just
Yeah.
to think about it, or,
Well, it's
But
interesting
anyhow,
now,
that-
also maybe this ties into the whole housing element work, right? Because
well, that's the other
downtown, they're gonna have to rebuild all those parking lots downtown. What are they
Yeah.
gonna do?
It's a huge opportunity.
right. So when we go to the level, to the second point, I want to just bring in that new standard, because it's going to be something. The idea of a street lighting is just a bit random, but the other one is real. I mean, all the new cars are going to have a new standard.
And maybe we can explicitly call it out, although it's not our recommendation, it's yours, is, you know, this idea of like, pay attention to emerging technologies, right? Because this is where we're at today.
Yeah.
Let's not lose the opportunity to act today, but let's pay attention.
Yeah, I mean, two years ago, the L1, L2 options weren't on the table, but they are now. It completely changes the way you think about it.
Right. Well, I guess, Ori, I'm curious, like, how you're feeling, because I think the subcommittee went away and, you know, they learned information and they've come back with some additional recommendations that maybe are different than what we had imagined when the subcommittee was set up. So I guess I'm really curious about what you all feel like you need in order to get this moving forward?
Yeah, so I think the key thing that we're looking for from the commission, right, is to like accept and then kind of confirm which of these subcommittee recommendations you'll want to include in the full commission recommendation on the cap 2.3 2025 to 2030 scope.
What's the time frame within which the commission has to make its recommendations for 2020?
So we've been doing it kind of over the course of the meetings since I think July. So we've done cap 1 mostly. We have a report coming back from the subcommittee on that to finalize that. We're gonna have cap 4 in February. We did cap 5. Cap 6 is coming in April. So for this cap 2.3, it's tonight. And then, barring the need to have further conversation, I think you're really close to something, but I don't want to speak for you. Then we could kind of like wrap up 2.3 tonight, and then like everything would be packaged and brought to the city council in kind of like this late summer, summer timeline. And then it's up to the council, right, to provide that kind of refined direction to staff on the scope for 2025, 2030. I'll just add, maybe just like as a clarifier, right? So, these recommendations related to budget items, there is money in the budget that goes to the climate action plan implementation every year. And then it's like as projects are kind of scoped out, right? Those are the ones that make it into the capital improvement program. So some of the cap 5 projects that, we brought to the commission and gotten into the budget. There's quite a lot of like analysis and kind of preliminary design work that needs to go into that, bringing it into the budget. And so like what I'm hearing is that there's definitely an interest in doing some of that as part of this 2025 to 2030 scope. But just wanted to clarify that like the timing for that, right? Because we still need to go to council, and when we go to council, it's going to be kind of after the budget for this year. So the recommendation, as I'm hearing it, just wanted to kind of like focus that on the timeline. It's like that work would happen in 2025.
Yeah, that makes sense. So to me, there are some very clear themes that are coming through the conversation tonight. And I'm not sure if it would be best to summarize those and get a vote, or if it would be better to go back to the August notes and try to merge those decisions with what's coming up tonight and like kind of merge it, refine it so that can be a clear direction to staff and recommendation to city council.
One thought is, I could be wrong and there may be a little bias here. I don't think we went too far up into the wilderness. We did use, this is more refining, like, for
Yeah.
example, it's outreach, but like a specific kind of outreach that
Yeah.
we're recommending, or it's, we need to, like the focus on the apartments and the small businesses in the city buildings.
Yeah.
We could have come back and said, let's do it all, but we
Right.
realized the incentives that exist today really incentivize us to go after these groupings. And as Brian said, it's also easier to have the outreach and everything. So I'd say if we can look at these as very aligned to what we talked about in August, but really refining them down into what feels practical and doable and a good use of city resources, that was the mindset I think we used.
Yeah, that makes sense. So maybe then we don't need to do the merging here, but we can say of all the things we talked about in August, the subcommittee went off, thought about it, says we should focus here, EQC agrees. And then as maybe staff is putting together, like what is the final scope of work, you guys can do that merging to make sure it makes sense
Yes.
later.
Yeah.
Or would you like?
I would say like if we will need the commission to decide if the commission wants to narrow the scope in their recommended scope, then we need the commission to vote on it. And I want to just make sure like what we are actually, like what we noticed this, because sorry, I'm trying to get to the agenda, and this is why I don't use the agenda for the presentations.
Right.
Uh,
What's your question?
My question is, what did we, okay. Review and discuss recommendations from the EV ad hoc subcommittee in the 2025. Yes, so,
So we did review and discuss.
yes, the,
Yeah.
the piece that like might be missing is like modifying the commission's recommendation on cap 2 and 3.
Yeah.
But I think we can move forward with it, and we will go back and talk to the clerk and like, let's do what we would like to do, and then let's make sure that it is all above board. And then, you know, if we find out that we actually needed to notice this portion of the discussion in a different way, then we
I
can.
mean, can Jeff and I take the August bullet points and just refine, you know, basically say, here are the proposed modifications, refinements to these.
Based on the
Define
conversation
it.
tonight, and then we could have that be on the agenda for, say,
Mhm.
February.
And can we send it out in advance to everybody? I mean, if we.
Yeah, I think that
offline
would
work
be-
And say, okay,
Part of the, like if we agree that there's, because I think this could be a very short conversation in February,
Right.
given everything we've talked about tonight. And you guys could just come back and merge those things,
Yes.
and it could be a very clear agenda item for February.
approved,
That's, you know,
Okay.
noticed
Yeah.
everyone, and there, you guys will have like 1 or 2 slides
Okay.
that need to be to Ori in like a week,
Okay.
a couple days.
Yeah, because if it feels like this is, maybe we don't have to take a vote on it, but if this feels like it's directionally correct, then all we're talking about is we would combine the two as a subcommittee. Knowing, because if nothing feels like it's too far off base, then we're just getting that down to a final proposal that then gets.
And my recommendation would be to break it out between cap 2 and cap 3.
Okay.
And go back and look at those August notes. And I guess the things I'm hearing in terms of narrowing, and if anyone disagrees, we should talk about it now, are narrowing to focus on multifamily units, 10 and more, plus the city buildings, small businesses, and maybe considering street charging.
Sure.
Maybe.
You can put it, yeah.
Researching emerging.
Yeah.
Because I think.
Yeah, that paying attention to emerging technology, focusing on L1 and L2 charging, not fast charging. And maybe this additional recommendation about the city considering partnering with other governmental entities to influence electric rates.
yes.
And I think you had your hand up.
I just wanted to share a few thoughts, kind of general thoughts, a little bit detailed questions. So we talk about L1 and L2. I think it might be important to specify low power level 2. So we're not putting in 50 amp level 2 charging. It's really important when we think about what the grid can handle and not overtaxing it with higher than necessary amperage on level 2 charging,
What's the definition of low power, what amperage?
like 20 or 30 amps.
Maximum, so should we say specifically maximum 30 amps?
I would say 30 amps,
Okay.
yeah. And then what I haven't really, like, so I think what we're trying to figure out is like how the city can help or influence and achieve its goals in cap 2 and 3. And it sounds like it's mostly about outreach and sharing opportunities for these folks to install charging. But there's a split incentive when you talk about multifamily and even small businesses versus who's the tenant, who's the resident versus who's the owner of the building. So that can be really challenging because who pays for the item to be installed and who benefits from it? It's different, right? So those are just things to think about. But it also sort of, would determine what our outreach looks like, because we can let all the residents know about all this charging, but they don't have the capacity
So
to
I think
convince.
it's inferred, but we're talking about focusing on landlords,
Okay,
not on residents.
and so that can be really hard too, because these landlords could live all over the country and they're not residents in Menlo Park.
Yep.
So, that's gonna be a challenge. I don't know exactly how we address that. One idea is to think about just local property management companies that often manage multiple buildings. So I don't know if the city has information about who are the major property managers in Menlo Park, but that could be maybe a more focused outreach to those, and then through them, you can reach multiple landlords.
Well, we have tax records, right? We know who owns the property.
But it's hard to track these folks down.
Is it? Is that true?
It is not really an easy way that I'm aware of.
Yeah,
Between legal entities. it's
Yeah.
not
Right.
Often owned by a person.
There's a lot.
Sometimes those things are legacy, like it's a company that holds multiple properties for
Yeah.
fairly well. But to your point, I mean, I think that is part of the reason too, why we're saying, the complexity of just getting to this smaller population is a lot of work for the city in and of itself. So
yeah,
combining that with residential, with everything else, we're really trying to say like, let's bite off pieces that we know the city can chew with. There are two people that they have dedicated in the department, right?
and I mean, the other thing that we talked about was, should the city match funds? And that was a discussion that EQC had a couple of years ago, I believe. And I don't think that, I don't know, it didn't seem that it's gonna be enough to get these landlords to actually install the charging infrastructure. So I don't know if we want to relook at that or do some more research on that. But
I'm, from the conversations we had, especially for the larger apartment complex owners, at the price points that they can get right now, it didn't sound like additional city incentives. And given our budget shortfall,
yeah,
I wouldn't recommend incentives.
We talked about, when we talked to PCA, it reminded me of that conversation is at about $300 per space for the larger units, and then the attractiveness of that for the landlords.
Competitive advantage.
Competitive advantage of like, then we have all,
yeah,
we have all these other spaces. It didn't feel like a big piece, but then also, if we do want to look at writing grants for this stuff with the city to even cover some of that piece, I think we could look at some of that, so.
those costs are drastically lower than were discussed 2 years ago in
Yeah.
EQC.
It's because of the PCE incentives,
Right,
they're getting it down to
Yeah,
just a normally.
Yeah, you can-
They want to charge our infrastructure, kind of technology and.
tackling it at the reach code, at the code side seems like a good idea, and especially if you could. And what I was going to point out is this transition of the charging standards. And you mentioned about moving into EV installed and in 2 stages, the one that was
Yeah.
ready to plug.
Right.
If you leave it at that point, then you kill both curves at the same time. I mean, like, it's cheaper to the installer. It also, you don't have to commit to what standard.
Right.
Because when a tenant comes in-
All the barriers.
Yes, you solve those problems at the same time.
Okay, Yeah.
one other question really is, so you install these charging stations at a multifamily residence, who pays for that electricity? How is that? Like, is there a direct line from that charger to the unit of the person who's renting that unit?
So
Or
manufacturers give the landlord capacity to choose whether they subsidize it, whether they pay for it outright, or they charge the renter directly.
Yeah, well, it's just something to think about, because I've heard conversations at the state level when it's talking about how much EV charging is required in new multifamily. It's been really important from advocates to say that the tenant should be directly connected to that charger so they can benefit from time of use and not get overcharged and just pay what they actually use. So those are that's a little more in the weeds, but.
Yeah, I think the market's gonna figure that out.
Yeah,
I mean, I think the property owners are gonna see what's competitive in the market.
but we want it to be equitable too and
Yeah.
make sure the renters aren't being overcharged.
Right.
Just a 2-second thing is, Ori, I'm assuming if directionally it feels correct, then what Brian, what John's saying is that is some of the detail that will get figured out in the actual cap planning itself. Like, we're giving you the direction to focus in and do that, but then some of that detail will get figured out as we work out the actual infrastructure, charging infrastructure plan.
Right, yeah, and I just to like clarify, it's like we're, the subcommittees giving a recommendation to the EQC, and then the commission will be giving a recommendation to the council. Staff will also be bringing a recommendation to the council that, you know, acknowledges and evaluates the EQC's recommendation. And then it's the council that will then be providing direction on like where we go from there. So
Yeah.
that's like, again, very in the weeds, but like, yes, yeah, the details of that we can flesh out, but if there are specific elements, right, related to like kind of the equitable elements and some of these other items that are kind of change the nature of it, right, and like focus in, those are things that should be included in the recommendation.
Great. So the
Council.
next step is you all take the conversation today, merge it with the August thing, come back with a recommendation for February. Yeah,
This is sounding like a motion.
yeah, let's make a motion.
Okay,
Anybody willing to make a motion about next steps here for this subcommittee? I suppose I could.
Whatever she said.
You made the motion.
All right, I'll make the motion.
okay, yeah, I think so.
I move that the EQC recommends to the subcommittee to take the feedback from tonight, merge it with the recommendations the EQC made in August 2023, and come back with a final recommendation that we can vote on in February.
I think it's outstanding and I'll third it or second it over.
All right,
Okay, so
I heard Commissioner McKenna first as a second, and maybe, or you could call for a vote.
yes, I can. Okay, so we have a motion to direct the subcommittee to kind of evaluate and retool the cap to 3 recommendation and bring back to the EQC. All those in favor? Okay, so for the record, all commissioners present voted in the affirmative, and the motion passes.
Great.
Great, so
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for that rich conversation. We have one last small agenda item, and then we can move to reporting. So C4 is given that Commissioner Evans is no longer on the building decarbonization subcommittee. There's an opportunity to add an additional person to that subcommittee, and I know they've got a lot of work to do. So we just wanted to open it up to this group and see if there was anybody that wanted to join. Anybody you want to have join. You're on it too, yeah, so. Yeah,
We welcome any support.
yeah, so any clarifying questions before we go for public comment?
Clarifying question, what's the approach we're taking to replace Commissioner Evans?
We're gonna do it as part of the April editions. So I think there's 2 commissioners here whose terms end in April, and you know, they do all of the recruiting for commissioners in the springtime. So we're just gonna operate as a party of 6.
Okay,
Um,
we don't have to go.
until the end of
Right
April.
away.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, okay. So we can have, does that mean that we can have 3 people on the subcommittee? I think so, because we decided last time that half plus 1, so we can still have 3 people on the building decarb subcommittee.
yes, I believe so.
Okay, so is let's take some public comment.
Yes,
Is
okay.
there-
Thank you,
On the
Chair.
motion or? Oh, comment on what?
The agenda item,
Oh.
yeah,
Yes.
of adding an additional
Okay.
person to the subcommittee,
Sorry.
right?
Okay, members of the public, please activate the raised hand feature. If you'd like to make public comment. If you're joining by phone, please press star 9, and we will allow you to speak. At this time, I'm not seeing any raised hands. So I will turn it back to you, Chair Headley.
We can open it for discussion. Was that a hand?
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
if it's available, I'm
Yeah.
interested to put my hat on the ring.
Great.
Great, thank you.
Can I be in both of them?
Both what?
Both.
Both subcommittees. The one.
Oh, yeah, you can join ours
Yeah,
too if you want.
yeah.
yeah.
No, I mean, I can continue being in the one that I'm.
Oh, the
Oh,
adaptability.
oh,
yeah.
Yeah,
See, got it.
Yes. Yes,
You can
Is
be
that
in
process
both.
question?
Apparently you can be in
Yeah,
also,
two.
you can be in also good.
You can only be in two.
You can only be two.
Yes, many subcommittees.
we're trying not to have too many subcommittees. We're having you do work and then disband, so.
Yeah.
You know, after you guys do your work and come back in
disband.
February, you'll be disbanded. You know, and adaptability and building decarb will still exist for the time being.
Let's have a party.
You can have a party. All right, does anybody else want to throw their hat in the ring for this subcommittee?
Well,
Yeah, well, let us make a motion.
Sorry.
Would you like to make a motion, Commissioner?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that Commissioner Pellegrini
Yopart.
Be added to the decarbonization subcommittee.
Second. Would you
Okay.
call for a vote?
Yes, all those in favor of the motion? Okay, let the record show that all commissioners present voted in the affirmative and the motion passes.
Excellent.
Thank you, thank you, thank you,
Yes, welcome to the party.
thank you.
Moving on to item D, which is reports and announcements. So why don't we start with any staff announcements? Do you all
Okay.
have any?
I will first defer to Liz if she has any reports and announcements.
Yes, give me 1 second.
Okay.
Sorry, I was typing. Let's see. Can you guys see me? Yes, okay. Hi everyone. So sorry, I lost my train of thought. What have I been working on? I've been working on getting going the incentive program for zero emission landscape equipment incentive for gardeners and residents. And hopefully that's going to be happening in the next couple weeks. I've been working with Ori on building permit streamlining project. And I think he'll probably have a more of an update on that. And then getting going on CAP 6 work and starting planning a meeting with the subcommittee. So those are my 3 big projects right now that I'm working on, and yeah.
Thank you, Liz.
Yes.
Yes,
I'm just curious what the Zelly incentive program is. Are there details you can share?
Leaf blowers.
Right, right.
I'm sorry,
is
I
it?
can't hear you.
I was curious if you could share more details about the Zelly incentive program.
Oh yeah, so the zero emission landscaping equipment, I think that passed in July, and part of the ordinance is that we were going to implement an incentive program for residents and gardeners to get rebates for purchasing equipment. So the way it would work is they would receive either a rebate or a voucher to go and purchase an electric leaf blower, an electric trimmers, and it's just incentivizing electric gardening equipment. And it's
Thank you.
sponsored by the city. Yeah.
So it sounds like maybe we'll get more details as it
Yeah,
comes forward.
we should have an update I think around April or no, June, once the program is running for about 6 months.
Great. Thank you. Ori, do you have any?
Yes, so just some general ones that the city has been moving forward with recruitment for the sustainability manager, and we'll share updates on that as they become available. Just a little bit more on permit streamlining. So we have been meeting regularly with the building division and planning division to identify some opportunities to improve the transparency of the information related to requirements. And I think we had talked about this at the commission previously, maybe in the context of the zoning ordinance amendments, but have also been working with planning on those. And so we are excited because we had our public outreach manager join just last week. And so that's a really important vacancy that's been filled, and we're looking forward to working with Kendra Calvert on a lot of our outreach things. So very excited to have Kendra on board. And then we'll continue to work on permit streamlining. Specifically, right, like where are the areas where we can improve the platform and the information that's available to try to prevent confusion. And then other things that we're working on, kind of moving right along with the kind of the PCE partnership for the first portion of the $4.5 million that was awarded by the state for existing building electrification, and we'll be bringing more information about that program forward. We're looking at targeting the March 12th meeting for the city council, and so again, that'll be taking the recommendation that the EQC made back in October, and then bringing that forward. Actually, might have been earlier than October, but yes, so exciting that that's kind of moving forward, and we're getting more information from PCE about like the program details, and we'll be bringing those to the council to confirm. And then, continuing the great work on CAP 5. So a lot of work has been done on our EV charging infrastructure, and we're continuing to work through that. We got our contract from PG&E, and that's moving through the process, and we were tentatively approved for some upsized switchgear. And so it's a matter of refining the budget proposals for a number of the CAP 5 projects, and then including those in the budget for the next the 5-year CIP. And then finally, the PCE solar. So Peninsula Clean Energy has selected the provider who's going to be doing the installations for the installations, operations, and maintenance for the Solar for Public Buildings program. And we have another set of site visits scheduled with them for this Friday. And so that's an exciting milestone. And then we have started, like we're well on our way for some re-roofing projects to try to take advantage of shifting those to the roof. And we have a scope, we're putting together the scope for an RFP to electrify the Bellhaven Child Development Center so that it can be included in that program as well. And those are the main kind of big ticket updates.
Very exciting. Thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
You have been busy.
Indeed.
Yes.
All right, moving on to commissioner updates. Does anyone have any to share? Maybe from subcommittees or any outside work that we might want to.
It's kind of early, but I'll just let everybody know that Menlo Park and East Palo Alto and Actera and Peninsula Clean Energy are collaborating once again on a Earth Day festival. So that will be held on April 13th at Bloom House, which is in East Palo Alto. It's a really cool site, and there will be building electrification, electric mobility, plant-based foods, lots of fun events for kids and for family. So we may there may even be some electric transportation to and from the event. So, yeah, just wanted to kind of early heads up on that.
Is this, there was something in Menlo Atherton High School last year, was that Earth Day when they
Yes.
had all these?
Same,
It's the same concept, it's just moving from MA.
yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Anything else?
So, yeah, just a few really quick ones. So we talked about, we've been sort of bubbling around with the urban forest plan that we've been working on as private citizens. I think we want to expose the EQC to that a little bit more. So we're talking about getting it on one of the future agendas. Partially just to get an endorsement and make sure everybody kind of stays in the loop. So it's not an official EQC business item, but having the endorsement of the EQC is a great thing. And we're gonna issue an update to, it's an email going out sharing progress. So if anybody wants a copy of that, I think it's fine if we share it. Because we're working as private citizens on the piece, but obviously a lot of people are interested in that topic. Canopy plays the lead role, but you know, we're engaged with the fire district. We have a lot of different stakeholders. Mayor Taylor's on our working group, as is the fire chief. So anyway, that's one that we will bring in more detail moving forward. One is just awareness, in case you weren't aware, and I think it's very exciting. At Stanford, the Haas Center for Public Service has a distinguished visitor program. And they had been doing that. It's a way to engage the community, but Mayor Taylor and Violet Sena, who is the exec director of Climate Resilient Communities, which is a pretty big partner for Menlo Park. They're two of the four distinguished visitors. So there was an event to kick that off, a really inspiring discussion and panel. I don't know if that's going to be shared publicly, but I can find out. But then they'll be there for a couple of quarters at Stanford, and I'm assuming there'll be a number of events and things. So stay tuned if you're interested in that, but it was really inspiring to hear some of the work that Mayor Taylor and Violet are working on. And then the last one is a little bit more just for awareness. So Menlo Park City School District, we've been ramping up in the background for them to create a climate action plan for the district.
Oh, very good.
And yeah, the superintendent is really excited. She's formed an advisory group. I joined that with a private citizen hat on, but obviously where we can do it, there's a ton of learning from the city on how to run a climate action plan. I think theirs is going to be a little broader. It's going to have a youth activation component that's pretty exciting. So just wanted to put that out there and happy to keep the group updated as that makes progress. Still very early days, but great. You know, there's a lot I think we can help the school district, and then using that for other school districts as well and inspiring them to do their own climate action plan. So
Well, the youth activation component of that, right? You learn at the earliest.
And I talked to Kristen about, you know, what's really exciting is I'm involved with the district to update their local control and accountability plan, which is how they spend their funding. And they brought in students in this fairly complex planning process to get student input and share the data with them. And these were middle schoolers. And I was inspired because they were analyzing the data and going, why did we do this and all that? So we're talking about even bringing middle schoolers into the CAP planning. So imagine like 6 of them sitting around this table. So anyway, that's you know, gonna be a fun journey to the end. So we'll share more.
Absolutely. Game changing.
As we go, yeah, hopefully inspiring to other school districts as well. So I know there's a little bit of separation of church and state with the city and the school district, but hopefully there's ways to, you know, at least share and collaborate a little bit. Yeah.
I'll just add that Menlo Spark is working with the same school district, as they develop their 5-year master facilities plan and looking at ways to electrify their buildings.
Yeah, that's actually one part of the recommendation. So they've already presented at the school board, and so that was what kicked off the larger CAP discussion. So yes.
Very exciting. It's lovely to hear how all these different citizens and organizations are supporting each other.
Yes.
Shall we?
Well,
Yeah.
just one note, just on, because the urban forest master plan might be coming to the EQC for a recommendation. I would just say, Jeff, if you can send the update to Liz and myself, and then we can forward it to the commission. So there's no excited
Oh, yes,
replies. Yeah.
Liz is, Liz is evaluating that by tomorrow morning. So yes, absolutely.
Okay,
I won't send anything privately, Liz. We'll leave it up to you. Once we all finalize that message, if you, as Lori said, could forward it on, that'd be great.
Okay, yeah,
Sounds good.
perfect. Yeah, so that'll be forwarded as part of our agenda and all of this. Any other updates? All right, well, with that, it is 9:15 PM and this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for those of you who've been staying with us online. Have a good month, everyone. We'll see
Thank
you
you.
in February.